A young fair-haired guy in a business suit stood resting on a sink in the bathroom and looked at himself in the mirror. He had ashtray white hair of blue eyes, and that was the paradox. A completely different person looked at him in reflection. A young brunette was looking at him, which, unlike the standing in the bathroom, was dressed not in a suit but in a simple white t-shirt. Asking the question of what his himself was the guy in a suit, he heard the answer from a man in the mirror that his name is Lee Ho-yol, and the fair-haired himself was called Nick Granfell Claudie Orpheus Romeo, the successor of the Great Clan. And I realized that I was hit. In the window of the status of Granfella Claudie Orpheus Romeo, he saw the age of 27 years, class hunter for demons and the characteristics of the dexterity of mana and good luck. To put his thoughts in order and calm down, he sat down and calmly brewed tea. It looks like he turned into his character whom he created 12 years ago. When I was in the second year of high school education, it is in the second year, he remembered everything as now. Then he was obsessed with the idea of creating the perfect version of the player, and at some point, he succeeded. And now he has become a character of which he created at the peak of the puberty, and all because of this game. The story of the continent of Arkan, one of the best games in virtual reality about another world. Knights, Dragons of the Battle. All the best that can be assembled in one game was in it. Until the server was closed, she was the best game of the world. Legendary game. And when the servers were unexpectedly closed by the general director of Cosmo, the creator of the popular game History about the continent of Arkan, in parallel, the news of the loss of the general director of Raymond Arkan came to the real world. The buildings were collapsed, the earth was trembling, all were scared and did not understand what was happening. A fault from which terrible monsters from the game appeared all over the real world. At that moment, the inhabitants thought it was over. But people united with their game characters, and they began to fight the monsters. So players appeared. They not only used skills from the game, but also defended the world, destroying the monsters. Players quickly became heroes. Of course, there was a time when Lee Ho-yol dreamed of becoming the same player and become famous. Now he looked like his character. And then Ho-yol realized that even if he widespread his strength, he still would not become as famous as everyone else. The price of buying a virtual reality device was tens of millions of there and renting hundreds of thousands over a month. The father's business also collapsed. Father apologized with tears in his eyes in front of his son for not playing, and his sister consoled her dad without seeing anything terrible in the absence of the game. Mother also considered herself guilty, and then whether Ho-yol realized the cruelty of reality. Ho-yolya had no choice but to quit playing Arcana. If Lee Ho-yol knew in advance that everything would turn out so now, of course, he would never have abandoned the Arcana. Lee Ho-yol has not lost even a year. 55th level. His statistics and skills were terrible. Although Ho-yol aroused his strength, who knew that he would become a character of which he created 10 years ago. Having finished his tea, Lee Ho-yol tried to keep calm, but from the inside he was torn and it seemed that he would go crazy. In his new body, he was unusual. Granfell Claudie Orpheus Romeo, the character of which Ho-yol created at the peak of the puberty, and in which he completely invested his soul, who he has become now. The story is as follows. Granfell was the heir to the great noble family, but his family was destroyed by the demon and he was left completely alone. Wanting to avenge his family, Granfell Claudie Orpheus Romeo became a ruthless hunter for demons. Lee Ho-yol played such a meaningless and cringeworthy story in his youth in the lasso. Then it seemed to him incredibly cool and mysterious. This was the second person of Lee Ho-yolya, in whom he believed at school. And at the same time, this is the dark past of Ho-yolya, which is a reality. It would be nice to recall those times and laugh, but it all incredibly confuses him. Lee Ho-yol tried to drown out his inner voice that chatted incessantly. But this is his real image. How to do it tomorrow. You need to be distracted from these thoughts. It doesn't matter this all the game. Whether the behavior of Ho-yolya has changed a lot despite the fact that he did not completely become different, but only synchronized with the character. If earlier he spoke differently and could endure the attacks of people in his direction, that's now everything has become different. But you can't behave like that. Sooner or later, Lee Ho-yolya will sue for such behavior. He began to consider himself a nobleman. This is all very wild and strange. So here's how to become a player and unite with his character in real life. It looks like a bifurcation of personality, at least at first, although many say that there is no difference. It seems Ho-yol now remains to be a player, but 10 years have passed and he practically does not remember anything from the game. First, you need to get some kind of information. This should be started. Lee Ho-yol opened a laptop. Since he does not know anything about how to be a player, needs to read something about Tom. When players clean the high-ranking dungeons, they receive hundreds of millions. However, they put their lives on a stud so that this is useless information in essence. In addition to the fact that life is more expensive than money, he Granfell Claudie Orpheus Romeo does not need wealth as he has already known prosperity. His thoughts merged non-stop with the thoughts of the character, and this began to scare Lee Ho-Yolya. But now this process is apparently irreversible. Granfell and Ho-Yol are now almost one. Today you need to find out what demons hunters do in the lasso. Only 2 pages on Wikipedia and a couple of news pages were nothing else. It turns out hunters for demons do almost nothing now. One news attracted Granfell's attention and struck him. The Akshan base is destroyed, the only city in which could become demon hunters. Holy land. Is there really no error here and this is about this Akshan? Can't be. All in desolation and devastation. There were no more hunters left for demons. So this role is simply destroyed. Its role. Of course, demon hunters in 10 years ago did nothing. They had low skills and characteristics, and their skills were weak. It was difficult for them to raise the level destroying the monsters. They mainly gained experience in performing daily quests, such simple and uninteresting types of bread and other things. However, no one could compare with them in the hunt for demons. Naturally, it was their niche. But the demons appeared only in the quests of demon hunting, and most quests forced the players to grind. This class was considered not just a waste of time. Players of this class were simply considered completely useless power. But uselessness and long pumping are different things. It was bad as all the training players died. More information is needed, and here is what you need. In one of the chats there is something interesting. Demons added to a new update, a new version of the Arcana. Now among the monsters there are also demons. This is what Granfell needs. The number of people's deaths increased with the advent of demons. Destruction of the mind of obsession. Even players of the 200th level suffer from them. Granfell thought about it. If everything is so bad and the demons appeared in real life, then why do demons hunters do nothing? But what if Granfell is the last surviving demon hunter? It made sense. And if this is really so, it was probably time to intervene, to save the rest. Even despite the 10 years of pauses in the game Lee Ho-Yolya, he is not even sure that these are the same demons that were in the game before. Even if high-level players can't cope what Granfell can do, he is weak enough now. Although his inner eye spoke the opposite. He is Granfell Claudi Orpheus Romeo and will not run away from danger. This is his credo. Who would not say what kind of demon will appear, they will fall from his sword. Thinking in any case is useless. And Granfell knows this. People die, the world suffers. Destruction ruined lives. There is nothing to think about. He will have to do it. Having tuned in these thoughts, whether Ho-Yol resolutely promised himself that he would make all the monsters go back to hell. Several years have passed since that great cataclysm. A lot of things were destroyed, but people were able to get to their feet and continue to enjoy life. Life returned to the streets, and everyone is slowly accustomed to the new world. However, not everything was as rosy as it might seem at first glance. Darkness was hidden behind the light. Negative emotions of people who are not fully accustomed to this world have become excellent food for demons. With such people with a weak psyche, demons could be manipulated and forced to attack ordinary people or do even more terrible things. The last participant was a little late, but the leader of the group, Chal, suggested a little more to wait. There was still at least a minute before the appointed time. Here he is. Lee Ho-Yol, he is also Granfell. Everything is already assembled. Granfell was the last member of this group. Chal introduced it to the rest of the participants and expressed the hope that everyone would poke each other. Looking towards Lee Ho-Yol understood how the players see a break. 2 sides of the street seem to be shared by an invisible light wave. Ordinary people cannot even touch him. If his forces had not awakened, whether Ho-Yol would be as common as all around. But what is more important is his task. Dungeon storage of the Knolls. This is suitable for levels from 35th to 40. Not so bad for the 55th level of Granfell. What was more complicated by demons and so on so far is not available. The average level of players who conquer them, according to his observations, was a 200th, the level of which Granfell cannot yet achieve. You need to work more diligent. It's good that not everyone wakes up immediately high level, so he found a group with players similar to his level. Participants of Group 2 guys Kan Song-Vuk and Choi Jung, and Girl with Young Yong. And of course their leader is Chol. They looked quite friendly and open in relation to him. Judging by the degree of destruction inside the dungeon, there was another group, and they had another 5 minutes to prepare. They will go the following. The degree of destruction is 19.8%. When the degree of destruction reaches 100, the monsters break into the real world. Therefore, players are allowed to clean the dungeons. Only players are able to stop this shy bomb, although it was not yet possible to stop completely, unfortunately. It was time to go their group. All participants were inspired and configured as positively as possible. Only Granfell was slightly defended from everyone. Although I understood that I had to get into the team as soon as possible. As the only son in a family with 3 sisters, Lee Ho-Yol, with dignity, coped with this test. In a joke, of course. He will cope with this team too. But it has not yet been able to establish contact as the group did not quite understand his jokes. Probably Granfell is better to be silent with your noble manners. The group entered the Dungeon of Knolls. It was their food warehouse. Everything was broken everywhere, garbage and blood. Before them, more than one battle with gnolls took place here. So far, there was not a single gnoll around, and there was no one at all. The participants stood looking around, but another group of players came in front of them. As the leader of the group told us, Chol, the main thing was to find the right place in this dungeon, and they will be able to grow up and raise their skills. And now, 70 meters ahead, they saw gnolls, monsters similar to wolves. And without hesitation, the main part of the group rushed into battle. Ho Yol was in no hurry. In their group, 1 tank is 1 magician and 2 DDs. Not bad. But the tank is more angry with monsters and does not protect the group as it should have been. The magician inflicts the main damage, so they do it now. But all this is not yet his problem, and whether Ho Yol stood just watching. His problem was the inventory, or rather, its absence. Granfell had nothing useful from weapons. It is necessary to fight at a minimum until he manages to find another weapon for himself. An arrow flies in his direction. Granfell immediately noticed a crowd of gnolls that aimed at him. There was an ambush behind the columns, a lot of gnolls with bows and arrows, and they attacked as soon as they realized that they were noticed. There were too many of them. The tank could not protect players at such a distance. The leader is Chal to us too. Others shouted and calling for help, but he ran away. The associates were shocked. Help came from where they did not expect. Granfell took his weapon in the form of a bow and arrows. This is usually not his problem, but sometimes punishment is simply necessary. The players thanked him and were surprised at his manner of speech. Lee Ho Yol himself did not want to talk so pretentiously. Meanwhile, the gnolls did not stop attempts to attack. They appeared so quickly that no one had time to concentrate. The magician with Yung Yong did not know what to do in the first place. Suddenly, Granfell began to protect her, covering her so that she did not worry, and used a strong spell even if it takes more time than usual. While she was conjured by the team held out with all her might, but these forces were no longer enough. Finally, she finished her spell, Fiery Arrows. The spell turned out with a bang. Fiery arrows flew by, demolishing the gnolls and freeing the way for the players. Just a couple of minutes and it all ended. Skills with Yung Yong were magnificent considering her small level. Fire arrows scattered all the gnolls. Until the monsters returned with Yung Yong handed out a healing potion to the wounded associates. And having come to themselves, the guys decided to deal with the leader. Not only did Chal allegedly did not see an ambush and brought them just in a trap, so much so, did not help. He just stood aside and did nothing at all. But something strange happened. The tank began to laugh, terrible and wild. There was clearly something wrong with him, as if it was not their own Chal at all. And then the light disappeared sharply. Everyone panicked. And Chal himself continued to laugh and call all his friends idiots. Definitely something strange happened to him, and only Granfell began to guess. Especially when a natural enemy was activated, and his natural enemies were only demons. Granfell's combat power will increase in a battle with demons. And it turned out, the demon stopped hiding when he realized that he was revealed. He got into us, Chal. He had fun that they understood this only now. The rest of the guys from the team were in a daze. They did not really believe that they were a demon for us. But while they thought the dark forces enveloped them and the vile black shadows grabbed everyone, the level of their mental resistance is very low. Emergency status fear was activated. The demon enjoyed the fact that the players were shaking with fear and illusia, which they themselves created. What these little people are stupid and weak. Before the demon had time to finish his thought as he was suddenly attacked by Granfell. But the demon knew that if you destroy it in this body, then the carrier itself, that is to us Chal. Of course Granfell knew, but so far he was just looking for a place where there was no armor on his body, because he understood that she couldn't break her. Granfell's combat power grew rapidly due to the close presence of the demon. And no matter how the demon was trying to manipulate to appeal to the conscience, Granfell struck. But unfortunately, he got into the armor. The demon again began to laugh and mock human stupidity and weakness, but did not notice one detail. The dagger of which Granfell touched him on his face was silver. The demon fell to the floor to his knees. Granfell approached him close. He was wondering how it happened that Chal became a demon. After the next combat failure, Chal was sitting for us all in bandages and patchings. His younger brother was nearby, high, pumped up, and large. The brother suggested joining his guild and become an analyst. The struggle is clearly not his horse, but Chal just wanted to stop being a loser. He was always teased and humiliated. His brother Tae Min was even a younger but much more successful fighter. Of course, we wanted to become an older brother who could be proud and not ashamed. Then the demon appeared with the desire to help. The level of mental resistance was practically absent in our Cole, and he became an obsessed demon. Chal could not resist us, and the demon took possession of his body. His subconscious mind fought with all his might, but could not break out. The demon was stronger than Cole. Naturally, Chal tried to warn his friends about the dungeon and the ambush, but it was unsuccessfully. The demon did not give him the opportunity to break into his body for a moment. Now Granfell continued to fight the monster inside no matter what. He tried again to put pressure on the fact that if he died, he would die in Chol. But Granfell did not stop us. The internal struggle took place in the body of Chal. The demon, thanks to Granfell, was already on the verge. The last blow and the demon left. The exhausted Chal Min fell back. It was already he. He himself could not believe how it was possible. It was just obsessed with it. Friends surrounded him. In addition, Chalmin was pierced by a blade. Why he did not understand alive? And no one around, except Granfell. He explained that the attack of a demon hunter never harms a person. Although a lot of years passed, Lee Ho Yol did not forget anything. Unfortunately, not a single subject of the new appeared after the victory. Not a demon, but a useless beggar. The head of the guild, Tai Min, was sitting with his brother Chol Min, while he told him the story with a demon, and confirmed that all the stories that were now wrote in all chats is true. The younger brother of Cholite Min even spilled tea on himself in surprise. This story happened in the detachment of his brother, and now Chol invites us to take Granfell in the guild. In addition, Chol Ming told us his brother that he decided to become an analyst in Gaon. Although before he was against this, now Chol Ming was aware of his limit and a more suitable role. After this story with a demon, previously Chol only did us what Tai Mina tried to catch up with us, but now he decided to proudly go his own way. Taemin was also interested in Persona Granfell. Even if you do not take into account the hunt for the demon, his mental resistance very high time, he did not succumb to the attacks and manipulations of the demon. In addition, Granfell used a dagger and not magic. Tai Min sorted us in his head a bunch of classes that are possible in the Arcana, but nothing occurred to him. It is strange even that Granfell went in a broken low level with such abilities. Tai Mina is strange for us, for he does not understand anything how it all could happen. Brother assured him that all this is true. The contract for us Chol Mina was ready. Tae Ming owes us many to him, and now takes him to the guild for the role of an analyst. The younger brother suggested that Chole read the terms of the contract. Having brought the contract better to see well, because even with glasses, vision was not perfect for us, Chol was covered with small evaporates. These are the conditions. The level of Granfell grew to 67th after the descent into the dungeon, and the battle with the demon, immediately at 12 points. But still, this is not enough. Communicating with his inner voice, Lee Ho-yol thought about how to properly distribute his glasses. He was very tired and decided to lie down. In the house, there was a complete mess, and according to Granfell, a clean mind can only be preserved in a clean house. And he set to clean, despite the protests of Lee Ho-yolia, who kept repeating about the rest. In addition, he prepared the right dinner for himself and enjoyed himself. This is exactly what the Granfell aristocrat should be, with a measured and restrained life. And he practically did not pay attention to his inner eye, whether Ho-yolia, which was already exhausted from fatigue. Thanks to this, Granfell realized that in addition to the levels and characteristics, the character settings that he asked originally 10 years ago are also used. Whether Ho-yol would have been sewing with custom-made food and would have fallen to sleep, but because of his character who breaks out and is involved with him, he leads a healthy lifestyle. It is necessary to remember what Granfell had talents. Granfell is not limited by one. There are so many talents in magic that it can repeat any spell after a one-time demonstration. He is also smart. Good physical potential. Granfell Claudie Arfe Romeo, this is his full name. The inner voice prompted Granfell that he wrote only the positive qualities of his character. If installations really affect real life, then you need to check it. And Granfell took the phone. There was a message from Chol Mina. He proposed to join the Gaon Guild, and even a contract was attached to the message for familiarization. There was no time to understand all this time, and Granfell decided to refuse. Now it's time to start checking. First, you need to check the talent for magic. On the internet, he found the basic course of the basics of magic and began to study. Having a refusal, Taemin was furious. How this proud laughs so dismissive to them? His guild is the best in Korea. They offered the house a car money and a share, and he took and refused. The brothers Tai Mina and Chol Mina had thoughts that May Granfell were offered to join another guild on even more favorable conditions. After the magic tower appeared in Seoul around the offices of foreign guilds began to open. But even without these foreign guilds in Seoul, the best are collected. One of them could bypass them. Tae Ming, executed to us, was sure that none of the existing guilds in any case could offer the conditions better than him. Even the highest level players from his guild did not have a similar contract. Not accustomed to playing us, Tae Ming intended to personally find Granfell and find out what was the matter and why he refused such a chic contract. Chol Ming told his brother everything he could remember. Granfell himself was engaged in the study of magic. He already understood all the fundamental principles of magic. You can apply any spell if you have enough mana. Lee Ho-yol did not expect another from Granfell. Spit on the Dark Past character Mankin is the symbol of high school, the best genius in history. The check was completed. Now Ho-yol can deal with the distribution of glasses. He was interested in how far his character Granfell could go. Any opportunities are open to him. 2 points for strength and dexterity. 7 in Manu, it is too low at the moment. And another plus in good luck. It definitely will not hurt in any business. It seems that Ho-yol from only 1 to 2 increased luck, but in fact he doubled her. Suddenly something good will happen tomorrow. But it happened not tomorrow, but already. Class quest accessible to passage. After the appearance of the Arcana in reality, the quests began to come across very rarely, and the reason is simple. There are not many characters that can give them to Arcan. Even an ordinary quest is very rare, and here is class. This is an incredible luck for Granfell. Simple quests of the class hunter were quite strange. In the news, Granfell found what he was looking for. He was not mistaken. The class quest was given only to one person from the whole class. These quests are so amazing that any person from class can fall out. It is not surprising that the player who received the quest enters all the news. But if you look sensibly, there are very few chances that the player of the 67th level will give this quest. But there was another moment. It turns out most likely Granfell was mistaken in the fact that he is the last remaining demon hunter. Therefore, he got the quest. Akshan was the basis of all demon hunters. It sounds cool, but reality can shock. Demons hunters were trained there, and for this there were special instructors. The tests were rather strict and complex. For example, climb a kilometer upstairs immediately without preparation and equipment, and their quests were a repetition of useless work. Demon hunters inhabited during training in conditions far from ideal. Gray, naked, cold walls and devastation. Only those who managed to lunch fell on lunch. Demons climb into the human mind. Therefore, it is logical that training is needed that will make the player stronger. Well, this is in the past now, and first you need to see the meaning of the quest. An association from former game developers was created in the Korean branch of Arcana in order to cope with chaos and damage that arose after the appearance of Arcana in reality. They respond to each update that is reflected in the real world, collect and analyze various information for players. In other words, an organization with overtime work. This work was a lot and most employees could only dream of the weekend. The two of the same employees sat in the office and reflected on the probability of renewal release this week. It is worth the update will appear on the site and reality also immediately changes. And it is necessary. Updating the page, they saw this very update of the game. The update was incredible. Some employees dreamed of dismissal. They turned off the phones, knowing that the journalists would cut them off calls. The update was the emergence of a new demon, new monsters, a new named monster, and a lot of such horror. It was something. Even the whole guild of players will not cope with this, and the whole association will not cope either. Even if you ask for help from a magic tower, they still do not do anything until the tower itself is threatened. It is useless to count on their help now. Humanity is under threat. It seems that it's over. Employees suspected that this collapse would be broken out. The monsters will win. Ryman is to blame for everything. Previous updates were at least feasible, but this already destroys the balance. What he only thinks there. Only a miracle can now save humanity. The last hunter for demons, Granfell was occupied by the second part of his class quest, or rather training of his weakened body. The goal was quite exhausting. 500 pull-ups of 1,000 push-ups of 20 kilometers of running, and 300 burpees. And this is all in one day. Part has already been completed. The whole body of the hunter trembled with an unusual load. On shaking legs, Granfell replenished the reserves of healthy products. At home, Senvich did his bite in order to have a bit to gain strength after training. But having completed all the exercises, whether Hoyol was satisfied with a feeling of completeness, he was able to complete all tasks for the day, although it was very difficult after the break. If it weren't for the pride of Granfell, Lee Ho-yol himself would have surrendered for a long time. So this time, this character trait was even into the hands. The dull quest is over and you can finally get enough sleep. Another day, and the next training. Granfell's body was still difficult to enter the rhythm. The quest was repeated, therefore the training was the same as yesterday. Complete mockery. The whole week has already passed. One and the same. They just mock. The goal for the week was fulfilled. Granfell is absolutely without strength after the physical exertion of such a force. How many times it needs to be repeated to get the reward is the main question. And in a week of efforts, Granfell receives 2 points of strength and dexterity. Items to improve characteristics are insanely expensive, and he received them even without raising the level. Go crazy, this is great. If this is a repeated quest, then it will be repeated constantly. And then the award fully justifies these terrible conditions for fulfillment. With such a reward, you can even 10 times a day such a quest. While Hoyol was sitting and resting in the park, he heard on the radio news about the last shocking update of Arcana. Most guilds announced that they refused to participate in the raid on the break. A new break has appeared the territory of the Count's family, as well as the named monster Count Asura. It is known about him that he is a demon and a vampire. Its level is 400-300. This is the highest level at the moment. Without ceasing Granfell, the news about the new update and his monsters. The Korean branch refuses to comment on anything. Not only his character is Granfell, but whether Ho-hol himself is shocked by such news. And how to destroy it. 403rd level of the demon. It will be a complex raid in history. For all news, they only talked about this. In all chats, only this was discussed. Guilds flatly refused to take part in the raid. It is too risky. I did not know what to do and whether Ho-yol. It is most difficult for players to cope with demons. No matter how strong, he would have to deal with constantly arising negative effects during the battle. Already, many say that you need to have at least a 10-fold advantage of the level to defeat the demon. And the Count of Asura is a monster with which Ho-yol could not even fight in thoughts. But his new class quest has already appeared and it was called a Vampire Hunt. Since this is the only vampire Lee Ho-yolya that is, Granfell is offering to win it. Of course it was very scary. But this is naturally afraid of the enemy of which you cannot win. But this is only the thought of Ho-yolya. The heart is even than ever. The body is now to Granfell, and he is not scared. The character himself who now took the place Lee Ho-yolya was determined to strongly punish all the monsters who spoil his life. Granfell will destroy them all. Lee Ho-yol knew that. Here is the devil. Judging by the results of the searches whether Ho-yolya Count Asura is in Russia at the moment, then first you need to go to the magic tower, because there is a portal inside the tower. This is a large-scale magic that allows the user to move anywhere, and one of the reasons why foreign guilds opened their branches here. It was time to go. But whether Hoyol does not really like Granfel's appearance, you need to at least throw a down jacket on the suit. They will go where it is now cold now. But Granfell did not even listen. Journalists crowded at the magic tower. They expected the arrival of Gaon. To get to the places of faults, the power of the tower portal is needed. And here he is, Guild Gaon and its head Taemin. Journalists surrounded them from all sides, but the guild did not plan to give any comments. Know where they're going. If they have a plan for the destruction of Asura. At some point, Tae Ming could not stand it and stated that he did not know, unfortunately, how to defeat the Count Asker, but he was not going to share any information anymore. Behind Gaon, a shining guild appeared. Both of them were in a hurry to get ahead of competitors. The head of the guild Shining Rocks was at 399th level. All big guilds rushed into Korea because of the magic tower, and their place is lower and lower. Apparently, they make a large bet on this raid. Before going to the raid, Chal was supported by the morale of his brother Tae Mina as best he could. We could not contact Lee Ho-yol, and this was angry with his brother in earnest. Knowing that the power in this guy is Tae Min was thinking whether Ho-yol will go this break. Perhaps they will meet in a magic tower, and he himself will try to convince him to join the guild. Getting by bus, Lee Ho-yol was already on the way to the tower. He watched a video about the use of magic. It can be useful to him soon. Now he completely understood the process. Magic is activated in 3 stages. Explore mana to intervene in her and show. That's ready. Thinking about magic and its creation, Granfell inadvertently made fire in his palm. People on the bus even expressed concern. He himself did not think that it would work. Great. Granfell learned new skills thanks to the video. It is not clear how it will be, but in any case, it is useful. Although having studied his profile, Granfell saw that new magical skills did not appear, and this is strange. Usually they appear immediately after studying something new. Maybe some kind of mistake. Meanwhile, the bus approached the desired stop. This is true. This is a magic tower. Majestic, beautiful building. A bunch of people crowded in the main hall. The appearance is very different from the internal structure. And here is the portal. Looking at him, Granfell experienced a strange feeling, as if he could understand portal magic. Perhaps it is even simpler than the magic of fire that Granfell has already experienced. The Gaon Guild was convened for a meeting of analysts, and the guy who fled to inform this accidentally passed Granfell into the portal near which he stood. And Chal managed to notice that the guy who fell into the portal was like Lee Yolya. But it's time to start a briefing. Discussions began the details of the faults and its constituent. The result is such that in the case of a breakthrough with a high probability, the fortress of Count Askara will appear a real world. If you analyze the latest faults, it was a shock for everyone. Well, in the meantime, Granfell was in Russia about the same fault. This place is already flooded with players and reporters, bloggers, and just onlookers who were not here. Granfell had already encountered one of such bad guys. He was angry and he was cold. All the same, it was necessary to listen to Ho Yolya and take a down jacket. A suitable level in order to go in a break from 200 and 200th. The degree of destruction of the fault has so far are 9 whole and 7/10%. Finally came. This is a break of the outskirts of territories. Granfell hoped that he would be warm next. A group of players called out on the back. Leonie Bellucci's level was 348th. She was 100 players in Arcana. The head of the guild Berserk. The head of the Berserk Leonie was rude and uncompromising. It was expressed more obscene. The character Granfell entered the break. This is the place of the outskirts of territories, and there was no warmer at all. Rather, quite the opposite. Good time for hunting. Granfell's rage boiled. Out of nowhere, the bloody wolves of 2030 appeared in front of him. There were a lot of them. Sharp teeth and burning eyes. Granfell has only a 6th, 7th level. But at the same time, Granfell was sure that he could win. These are the dogs of Count Askura. Granfell took out his dagger. The wolves attacked all at once on Granfell, who was already waiting for this. Yes, the hunt will begin. Hunting for wolves was also busy with Leonie Bellucci. She violently scattered them to the sides, swearing through the word. The participants of her guild Berserk tried to reassure her a little. Today, Leonie is especially angry, and the wolves did not end. This is weird. They have already destroyed so many monsters. The wolves seemed to not feel fear at all, or rather, did not even know about him. Somehow, everything was unnatural and Leonie felt it. The wolves did not whine and did not howl in pain. The players never heard from them a sound. Suddenly in the distance, they heard a howl, and the howl was not ordinary. He sounded scared. What happened there? It was necessary to check in person, and Leonie and his guild went to that place where the plaintive howl of the wolves was allegedly heard. Cleverly managing the bow, Granfell directed the arrow towards the wolves. He felt Manu on the tip. The arrow, although not the best, but you can explore mana and intervene in it, and then show. And Granfell shot. The fiery stream rushed towards a flock of wolves. A little away, Leonie Bellucci with her associates watched this a little away. They were amazed. They have never seen this. What the hell? Granfell sat calmly drinking tea on a stone and watched the wolves burning around him. The fire arrow was an excellent magical skill and coped with the task as it should. Leonie herself was annoyed by this guy who was watching. He was dressed in a suit and shoes, and this is in the raid on a break. He also sat so calmly drinking tea in the middle of a flame. The members of the Guild Berserk decided that Granfell was just a streamer who decided to draw a live broadcast from the fault and tried to drive him away as it was unsafe here. The proud Granfell looked perplexedly at these upstarts, and ignoring Leone, silently continued to drink his tea. Of course, it became even more infuriated. Without hiding Leone Bellucci's irritation, she pounced on Granfell with reproaches. How he dared to ignore her at all, but before they could continue confrontation, as they appeared behind. Enemies. Where did they come from? Incomprehensible, and there were too many of them. These were bloody bandits 2030s. Guild Berserk prepared for battle. Most enemies were weapons, but that was not all. They saw a crowd of bandits on top of the mountain. The players were surrounded. The members of the guild were waiting for the order from their leader Leone about what to do next. Granfell only grinned sarcastically, observing their panic state. Almost forgetting about his presence, Leone asked Granfell why he was still here. He was asked to run away because not quite the time to drink tea. Hundreds of arrows have already flew from the mountain in them. So far, no one from the guild knew what to do and whether they have now had a chance of salvation. Still sitting on a stone, Granfell decides to explore mana inside the thermos. Interchanting is also easy. It remains only to show. Typically, to use the skill of the desired coverage, the amount of mana which is still does not have Granfell. If his guess is erroneous, then he will simply turn off when trying to manifest. But what if the Granfell spell will not be skill? Since there was no other exit, Granfell decided to take a chance and try, and did not lose. In front of him and the players of the Guild Berserk, a huge stone wall protected them from arrows. Players have never seen this before, the skill that can create a wall of this size. But it was not a skill. As Granfell explained to those present, he used the real magic. He understood for himself that you can change the shape of objects if you intervene in them by mana. The wall protected Granfell and the Guild of Berserk from this side, but on the other, enemies also advanced. The players were still surrounded. It looks like Granfell will have to postpone a tea party. The players attacked enemies again. Granfell took his bow again. One of the guild was wounded and urgently needed a healer, and the attacks did not stop. From one shot, Granfell defeated the enemies. No one could recall to see such a strong archer earlier. Leone too could not understand the archer or alchemist. If he created the wall. Again a fiery arrow. Only the guild has already seen this arrow. Now the magician has also been added to the list. This guy has so many skills. Everyone was wildly interesting to everyone who he was. And first of all, Leone Bellucci. After using Granfell, the arrows no longer left nearby. Leone sat in shock, and Granfell annoyed her, his pride and indifference. She would never recognize this, but she was enraged that he was stronger. I went in a break completely alone and does not answer questions. Also, after the battle, not a bit of tired, but no matter how Leone wanted it, but it was necessary to admit that they would not survive without him. Similar to Ranker, but Leone Bellucci could not recall anyone like that. You probably have to thank him for his help, if he does not ignore again. Suddenly, Leone noticed that Granfell was not looking up at her, and was insanely embarrassed why it was not clear why. Maybe he wants to invite tea. But Granfell answered her in a completely reversed tone. The journalist is reporting directly from the place of the appearance of the fault. The whole world was literally chained to screens. Nobody saw a boss of this level. This break was one of 3. The outskirts of the territories is its name. To go to the next level, you need to clean this break. What are the guilds such as Berserk Gone, Shining, and others are doing now? Everyone was interested in who would be the first in the ranking. The guild that will clean up the gap faster will accurately receive worldwide fame. The director of one of the television channels who arrived at the scene also watched the report on the air in his tent. Suddenly, from the cameras on the drone, he noticed something from the tent. Having informed the reporter that the director was cleared the first breakdown, the director ordered him to go there immediately. Due to poor visibility, it was not clear who cleared the collapse. Arriving at the place, the reporter was surprised to tell the director that he discovered the Guild Berserk, which have so far been in only 32nd place in the guild rating. The director could not believe that the Shining only by half and the Guild Berserk was already completely cleaned up. But it was so. They also practically did not suffer. The reporter also saw Granfell. He was a Korean, but the Berserker is a European guild. How it happened. Other reporters ran in. They needed to have time to interview the first. And he went to Granfell. He bombarded him with questions about where he had him from, what kind of ties with the Berserker, and what happened here during the stripping of the fault. The Granfell, which was not configured for an interview, asked the reporter to move aside for the good. At the same time, other reporters immediately ran to Leone Bellucci. Everyone was sure that her guild coped so well with the cleansing. Still dumbfounded by the power of Granfell Leone, she refused to give any comments. She did not know what to answer. In fact, she did almost nothing. And also Leone was still terribly angry with Granfell for complete indifference and ignore. She looked around and realized that he was not nearby. Left. Companions reported that Granfell had to visit home. This fact has infuriated Leone even more. She had already surrendered and wanted to give Granfell an interview so that everyone knew that he had cleaned this place and not her guild. As if he did not even understand what the honor of being the first. While the guild and reporters were versed in what was happening, Gaon cleaned his break. They returned. And the participants in the guild of Gaon looked much worse than the Berserker. Tired, beaten, and wounded. The head of the guild to us, Tae-min, was great when he found out that they were not the first. But even more to us, Tae-ming was surprised that they were bypassed by the guild berserk. Some kind of 32nd place. A little later in the guild camp, Gao and Tae-ming with our brother Chole lunch, listening to the next news. Everywhere they talked about Leon and her guilds, and also about how she said Min said that Gaon was not the only strong in Korea. These were generally the only words of the berserker leader about the first sweep. Chol also did not understand how they succeeded. And why did she talk about Korea after all, the European herself? They met someone from Korea in a fault. But who? All Gaon participants asked this question. And of course we Tae-min. He did not like competition. Gaon was considered the strongest and should remain so. Well, only one person came to our minds. And this man was already taking a burning shower at home. Lee Ho-yol. He is Granfell. Whether Ho-yol would lay down and rested, but Granfell noticed that during his absence, a lot of dust accumulated. And once again, he set to clean. I also prepared food. Lee Ho-yol considered his character to go. And since I still did not want to sleep yet, you can check your profile. Lee Ho-yol did. Nothing useful fell out of the inventory, unfortunately. But the level was already 86th. He climbed 19 levels higher. Not bad too. But not so much for stripping, the fault is almost alone. Magic requires less mana than skills. And thanks to this, Granfell was able to use it more times. But mana regeneration is very slow. There was no approaching equipment, only a suit. Demon Hunter class with advantages that do not concern skills. Unlike Granfell, Lee Ho-yol himself understood that if it were not for the group and not that girl, perhaps he could not have coped. Granfell could not just come to terms. If someone underestimates him, then it proves the opposite. If it is overestimated, it becomes better and revaluation becomes a reality. Their next goal is the territory of the Count. There is no time to relax as Granfell believed. You can't rely on one magic. We also need combat skills, and today he found a suitable object for research. Exactly. Other players fought nearby. And the most noticeable was a girl with short hair and 2 blades. If Granfell can repeat its movements, then it will be excellent. There is no getting away from the base, and Granfell decided to undergo a daily training, and Lee Ho-yol could not stop him. But it was necessary to sleep at least a little. During the training, Granfell listened to the news on the radio. The outskirts of the territory were already cleaned by 95%. Soon the territory of the Count's family will become available. But according to the information received, the progress of the destruction of this fault suddenly jumped to 60%, although it was not even open yet. At such a pace, a fault can be broken out soon. Experts are concerned. The same news was listened to by Guild Gaon. Only 1 day passed. It was not clear how 60% could appear. The cleaning time was reduced if strong monsters in the fault. Really so fast the monsters have become so strong. Many times more than before. They all need more information. The director of Arcana 2A asked the same question of the power of monsters. They need to find out about this first to raise the channel ratings. But so far, even guilds have not figured out this issue. It was no longer even a question of the success of the company. If the collapse opens and the monsters get out this end, the end will come for the entire population. All players and civilian will die. This was not before. Therefore, absolutely no one understood what was happening. This information was stored only in a con. Granfell needs to be in a hurry. Vampires are creatures that are divided by force with the help of blood. Count Asura divided its strength between monsters of the outskirts of territories, and after the death of the monsters, the force began to return to him. The Count of returned power began to pour into the monsters the territory of the Count's family. Therefore, they become stronger, and the progress of destruction is accelerated. Thinking about this, Ho-yol realized that if a raid on the territory of the Count begins, then there is a chance that the fortress of the Count's family will immediately collapse. It's all that. But Granfell will not give this to happen. He will become a personal judge Asura, and he will pay for everything. And despite the protests of Lee Ho-yolia, who insisted on vacation, Granfell dressed and went hunting. The break of the territory of the Count family. The recommended levels of players are from 305th to 400th. There were 5 hours left before the breakthrough. Meanwhile, before the fault of the territory of the Count's family, Pa Hui-gan leads its live broadcast. The clock is 3:48, and a lot of guilds have already gathered before the fault. Hui-gan talked about what, since unlike the outskirts of the territory in which there were about 200 entrances this time, there will be only about 30, and guilds will have to apply for them at the same time. Finally, Chal Ming approached. The brother was waiting for him, as well as the news that the older brother could bring. Tai Ming Yus, as always, was in the spirit, but Chal Ming did not bring anything useful. And besides this, he did not notice how Pak Hui-gan went behind the camera. One thing was clearly avoided. Here they could encounter Shining, but they seemed to go north. Berserker goes along with the second son in Bohemia. It looks like they were noticed after the first stripping. It's crazy about the joy that he managed to stream Pak Hui-gan. His broadcast was gaining momentum. And then guests came to Gon. Or rather, potential competitors, Guild Inazuma. They also planned to enter in a break in front of which Gaona players stood. The leader of Inazuma was Hisagi Kazum. The player is 376th level and 6th rank. This is a Japanese guild. Mocking us, Tae-ming reminded Hisagi Kazum that Inazuma insisted not to place a branch in Korea, and they had to fly here for half a day. They answered with the same ridicule. Both guilds were going to enter this break and no one was going to give in to each other. The only strangers who was present was the hidden Huigon. He will be the only streamer that will show as Inazuma and Gaon will come together. The poor fellow did not have time to rejoice at this thought as journalists fled from all sides. The stripping should become crazy? Gaon against Inazuma. This will be shown on all channels. Everyone was interested in watching the confrontation of Korea and Japan, as well as the confrontation of the heads of guilds. Inazuma was a little ahead, and this proved us Taimina to go through this cleansing faster and better. Inazuma and Gaon entered the Eastern Break, an unexpected turn of events. Two guilds are known for their long-standing hostility. Their ranks and the national component attract a lot of attention to the competition. The Northern Faults remained with the first and second places shining and united by heaven. In the Southern Fault of the Berserker, the Second Sun, and Bohemia, meanwhile, the degree of destruction reached 80%. What causes anxiety and fear in people around the world? Granfell was in no hurry opposite. He spent his time behind the usual tea party. In the last fault, Granfell realized what could be left without mana, and it was dangerous. Therefore, you need to urgently find the opportunity to use it as effectively as possible. And the result is like that. Magic based on the skills of alchemists allows the objects to give any form to objects. Granfell used stones from which made a cup and table. But the more details Granfell adds, the more mana consumption becomes. Therefore, in battle, it will not be particularly useful. How to try to bite a piece that cannot be swallowed. Another thing that Granfell understood, the soldiers of Count Asura of the 300th level have already approached him. And then Granfell used the return spell to the initial state, and all the soldiers scattered into small fragments of stones. Mana's consumption was minimal. It will be called reverse magic. Meanwhile, somewhere in the depths of the Count's territories, the guild Gaon fought with the same Asura soldiers, and quite successfully. But Taemin seemed strange to us that the monsters were somehow unusual. The arrived spy, Taimina, reported that Inazuma had the same situation, no more than 10 monsters. This is despite the fact that they initially went in different directions. Although they are already here, the spy thought that perhaps they sat on her tail and came to Gaon with her. Tae-Ming and Hisagi Kazuma exchanged us with cobbles once again. The skirmish was interrupted by the call to us Tai-Min from his analyst. He asked where they are, for the picture is bad. When Chal heard us that they screamed in the city square, calling for his brother to take the guild from there urgently. A moment later they understood why. We heard the clatter of hooves. These were the knights of Count Asura of 305th levels, and there were clearly more than a dozen of them. We'll have to join the battle with the cavalry. On the plain, the horsemen become many times stronger, which even more complicated the task. The enemies came again from all sides. You can't fight on the plain with them. The only way out is to close them into a narrow lane, or retreat. But there was nowhere to retreat. Suddenly, a huge stone wall grew up in front of the knights and participants in both guilds. Chal and the cameras recognized whether Ho Yolya came to the aid of the players. Thanks to him, stone pillars grew around the battle, without a single spell in one movement. Everyone was surprised at how much magic was in this guy. Without military equipment, just in shoes and suit. The enemy broke through stone obstacles, but stone pillars began to immobilize the riders. But we also had a skill, the unique skill of Barbara. He increased the power of attack and reduced damage. With this skill, he will be able to resist them. It was their chance. Guilds attacked enemies, all at once. While they were immobilized by them, could quickly be destroyed. And Huigan continued to follow them and broadcast. Spectators who saw what Granfell made was delighted with his capabilities. That was not all. Now Granfell used the recent reversing magic on knights, and all cavalry at once turned into stone fragments. Not only spectators, but Huigan himself was fascinated. What kind of miracles? No one has ever seen anything like it. Questions poured one after another. Having taken his dagger, Granfell thought about what would happen if you change the dagger Manu and give it a different form, and then return it to its original state. Maybe the strength will be restored, which after the battle became less. When Granfell turned the stone into a cup of ordinary stone, turned out to be a very strong cup. And then he turned the cup into a stone with ordinary strength. If this transformation can restore the original state, then yes, it worked. The shape of the blade has changed. The spoiled dagger returned his shape. Now do not have to pay for repairs. The strength of the weapon remained as it was also initially. At the end of the battle, those minds watched Granfell, who drank tea, and immediately realized who in front of him, the one whom he and his brother were looking for. It cannot be missed, especially now when he was seen by the members of the Inazuma. Surely Inazuma will also try to recruit this craftsman in their group, and Taemin wanted us to get ahead of them. Huigan, who continued to shoot Hang, went to Granfell. He dreamed of asking the hero a couple of questions. His spectators have already gathered almost 100,000, also wanted to hear it. But again, Huigan was killed. The participants of both guilds ran to Granfell, wanting to learn more about him, as well as vying, offering to join their guild. Taiming unceremoniously showed them all and introduced himself to Granfell's hand, and he recalled that he sent him a message with an invitation. Granfell did not give his hand. In his opinion, Taemin is non-re portinas. Hangan Granfell also categorically refused to answer all questions. All this was observed by the audience on the air. How we have a minute refused to shake a hand, including All news headlines were that the mysterious player did not answer questions due to non-compliance with etiquette and does not give a hand. On the basis of the Guild of Shining, they also discussed the last laid, Rock's leader of the Kamila Luchnitsa and Dmitri group. They also tried to find out who this mysterious stranger is. And of course, none of them had a doubt that he should be invited to the Guild to the Shining. Especially on this, Camille insisted on him pretty. Rox was a little dissatisfied with the fact that in all news only the question of this guy, but before they showed them most often. Also the fact that he was the first to carry out and almost alone, and now they make a star from it. But no one else could say anything about this, and the members of the guild dispersed about their business. Only Rox remained on the basis. Jessie Heinenis joined him. She was a magician. She reported that what this guy does like magic, but also differs from her. Even she did not know what to think. Guild Berserk was also on its base. And oddly enough, they also watched the news with the participation of Grandfell. He was clearly not a simple, ordinary player. Everyone understood this. On the basis of the Inazum Guild is like this. They also discuss Grandfell. The leader of the Hisagi Kazum group is obsessed with the idea of getting him to his guild, and he received an order to do this from the government. Arcana 2A TV channel on the air with fresh news. Following the fault of the surroundings of the territory, the county was cleared where the guilds of Shining and United by the Sky met. Everything went without special incidents. As a result, the Shining first cleaned the dungeon, then the Count's Citadel remained. Currently, the collapse is 72%. Players from all over the world gathered here and are preparing for the beginning of actions. This time, a break is quite dangerous, the excitement of the players of which was not observed before. The broken Citadel can lead to complete death of Russia. It remains only to wish the players good luck. It will be as difficult as possible. Grandfell also watched the same news. They said about him that he did not have equipment built guesses whether he had magical objects and other assumptions. The breaks specialist Park Bong told us that if this player had been late a little more, it would have happened terrible. He immobilized opponents and immediately changed the landscape, thereby saved the guild Goan and Inazum. Experts converged in the opinion that Grandfell simply took care of the guilds, so he saved them and then simply watched. They did not know that in fact Grandfell had nothing more to continue anything. This time I managed to get a couple of trophies. The necklace of the blood cursed effect of which is sealed. Such items are called demonic. If you remove the curse, there is a chance that the effect will appear. In other words, this is a lottery. The difference is too much between the probability of the appearance of good options and a waste of money to take off the curse. Therefore, most players simply throw away such items. But there is another way of using damned objects. This is one of the skills of a demon hunter to sacrifice during an exorcism session. Typically, such a skill was used to attack demons without harm to the one in whom it has engaged in. But in the presence of a victim, everything happens differently. The demon's invitation is carried out to his mind. This is similar to a method that demons themselves apply to people. Of course, there is a probability that the demon will enter the body if the indicators of psychological power turn out to be low, but if it helps in the battle. On the phone of Lee Ho-Yolia, an incoming dump from us was displayed. But Ho-Yol decided not to pick up the phone because he suspected that Grandfell would begin to grumble and decided to simply answer with a request not to sue for a rough appeal. Having received such an answer to us, Chal and Taemin did not understand what we were talking about at all. Is Ho-Yul again refusing a strange form? But Taemin wanted us to excuse us for his behavior and offer normal conditions for joining the Gaon Guild. Once again, the brothers Taemin and Chol watched the news with the participation of Grandfell. Well, since he does not pick up the phone, then we will have to focus on the more important on the graph of the Askur. The percentage of destruction has already reached 83%. It was time to start preparing the penetration of a new fault inside. And then the walls of the base came in a chando as if an earthquake began. Then Chal turned us on emergency news, and they, with us Taemin, heard that there was a sudden break of the citadel of Count Asura. At the stage of 80% for unknown reasons, a sudden break occurred. Roja urgently recommends that his citizens leave the adjacent territories. After all, after the break, the Count's citadel appeared in Russia. It was an emergency. The number of dead is already more than 200 people. The United States and the European Union advise Russia to close the borders, in connection with which players urgently begin preparations for campaigns in the Count Citadel. All the same, it happened. Grandfell has already arrived at the scene where crowds of fearless people gathered again. He was recognized. People were amazed. Grandfell himself was going to go there without a single help. Incredible. And Grandfell went forward. Lee Ho-Yol entered the territory of the Count's Citadel. Looking around, Grandfell mockingly noted that this was not worthy to be called the Citadel. Domeshko and a miserable statue in front of the house, although for a lousy vampire, and this was a luxury in his understanding. After all, the fortress of the clan Claudi from his dark past was 10 times more. The statue of the demon viciously grinned hearing Grandfell's words. She heard everything and jumped off the pedestal. Players who observed this from afar were horrified. This huge statue is more than 10 meters in height. They worried about Grandfell. He needs to help him somehow, but no one dared to come closer. But help was not required. One movement of the hand of Grandfell and the stone statue scattered into millions of small fragments. The loud rumbling sounds were heard by the members of the guild Shining, which were just on the way to the citadel. Sounds reminded them of the sounds from the video from the news where the knights also scattered. With the help of magic, Jesse Haynes rose above the ground several tens of meters and saw what happened near the citadel and informed her associates. This stone himself seemed easy enough Granfell since he already dealt with them, and in terms of material and in qualities and depth, it is just sewing a statue. Seeing that the guard was destroyed by the players who had not dared to come to the citadel because it was their chance to break through inside. After the death of the guard, they had a fighting spirit. Having opened his profile, Hoyol saw a new class quest, Desert of the Confrontation. Feel the fear of the victim. What would it mean? But Granfell did not have time to think, and he also went inside the citadel. Lee Hoyol did not persuade his character first to think about it. He did not stop. It doesn't matter that Granfell has a 100th level A, has 450 Asuras. Granfell, Vampire Hunter, was too confident in himself. They entered the banquet hall. Everything around was red on a long, ancient table. On all walls hung paintings with portraits of Count Asura. Meanwhile, Gildgaon also entered the Count's citadel. When Tae Ming saw his portraits, he had the feeling that they were watching him. These portraits of demons made you feel worse, and it was decided to burn all the portraits. Taimane immediately became easier to breathe. In the statue of items of furniture, there were a lot of traps. Absolutely all this causes strange sensations. Now Taemin understood us why the Shining Guild did not go through the main entrance. If already at the entrance such terrible pressure was from some simple paintings, to imagine what was waiting for them further in the citadel. In the banquet hall, the column portraits were not pressed on Granfell. He simply did not like them from an aesthetic point of view. How can you have dinner in such a terrible environment? Granfell was quite harsh in expressions. The statues, too, seemed to Granfell miserable all around. He called a dull, bad taste. His noble origin gave him an occasion to resent from such horror. The structure of the castle, according to Granfell, was also terrible. Too many moves and branches are also a dead end at the end of the corridor. Outraged by Granfell went to a long staircase, also covered with bloody red carpet. It seems to him exactly there. At the top of the stairs were the doors where the nasty smell came from. According to the scheme, this is the center of the citadel. As Granfell prompted his intuition, it was the Count of Asker. And judging by the silence around, other players had not yet had time to penetrate inside. And then Jesse Haynes jumped out in the face of Granfell. The magician from the guild is Shining. She immediately, without preface, expressed her admiration for his skills in magic. The fact that Jesse hung in the air struck Hoyolia, but not Granfell. He was struck that he was forced to save magic and someone was using it as if water pours without regretting. Restless, Jesse Haynes chatted without ceasing to find out the secret of Granfell's magic. She watched the video with him so many times but could not understand. This magical skill was new for Jesse. Looking at Jesse Granfell, I thought that again everyone neglected the rules of etiquette, to which he rudely pointed to Jesse Highness. The girl behaved indecently and did not even say hello, and immediately attacked personal questions. Jesse frightenedly looked into the eyes of Granfell, and while they found out the relationship, opened the door. The same door on the edge of the stairs. There, wrapped in his cloak, the Count of Asura himself stood. The skill of the natural enemy was activated instantly. Count Asura was unhappy that miserable little people disturbed his dream. The Count stood angrily and carnivorously grinning. Unlike Granfella, Jesse Haynes did not expect to meet the Count here. She was worried about Granfell's condition, but he was fine. Getting his reward in the form of a necklace of the cursed blood, Granfell turned to Asura, saying that he was just a vile vampire. At that moment, Granfell was going to present the lesson to Count Asura for dare to call himself an aristocrat. Exorcism was activated. Exactly. Lee Ho-Yol realized that Granfell was going to conduct a rite of exorcism using the victim. Thus, you can cause an Asura in your consciousness and will fight with it. It remains to come up with how to make Granfell be afraid. After all, the condition of the quest is the fear of the victim. Count Asura has 430th level. There was a considerable risk. If something goes wrong, the graph can get into Granfell. The Count saw the necklace, did not understand why it was intended. But all the same, Granfell's impudence even liked Count Asura a little, but he is still a miserable bug for him. The Count again gathered the power that he distributed to his servants, and this was a problem. The difference in levels is already more than 300, and if the Count absorbs the force that he distributed very badly, and then the Count was dumbfounded by the Count. They moved to another place away from his castle. The fact that Granfell has some abilities recognized the Count, but he still did not fear him a drop. The Count attacked Granfell by sending a stone where he was sitting. The second and Granfell is no longer there, and according to the Count, he died. But it turned out not at all. The Count of Asura miscalculated. Granfell was intact and unharmed. The Count was furious. Expressed Asura demanded to explain how Granfell managed to survive, and he explained. As it turned out, not Granfell died at all, but just the Count of Asker. In any case, such a picture in his imagination saw Asker. He did not understand what was happening. This simply could not be. The Count is sure that these are all tricks and Granfell's deception. Asura, in wild rage, sent a wave of power towards Granfell, but missed, and the roof of his castle into which he just flew. Granfell himself did not even lead a muscle, as if he knew that the Count would miss, and Jesse out of habit even opened a shield. Lee Ho-yol also thought that they would end. The rite of exorcism continued. This skill made it possible to attack the demon without harm to the same in whose body he got involved. Therefore, Granfell survived. When using the victim during the rite, another effect may appear. This is a demon invitation to the mind of his prey. Control over consciousness depends on mental power. Asura was already praying for Granfell to stop and unhook from him. His mind burned. But the demon could not shake Granfell, and Lee Ho-yol and Jesse were delighted. The Count shouted loudly into the void, or attacked the space in which there was no one, and ran away in fear. And none of those present understood how Granfell succeeded. The Count was amazed at how some miserable little man overcame him. The Count of Asura is in a state of horror. This is very similar to the horror that demons inspire people. The quest to feel the fear of the victim was fulfilled. This is what was meant by this task, in fact. The fact that Granfell inspired fear and the horror of the Count was struck by Jessie Hines. She all served how he did it. In addition, she asked to teach her this, but I did not receive an answer. After all, at least Granfell was now busy with others. He took out his dagger and pierced the Count with a blade. I tried to do this anyway. The demon of the 430th level was not so simple. Damage was not caused by a simple weapon. And then Granfell turned to Jessie, saying that her turn to deal with the Count. Frightened, Jessie Hines did not immediately understand what they want from her. But Granfell did not want to admit that his level was not enough to finish with the Count, and he was just silent. Lee Ho mentally supported Jessie and hoped that she had enough strength and spirit to finally defeat Count Asker. Jessie hoped that if she deprives the Graph of Life, then the secrets of the magic of Granfell would befall. The girlish naivety and stupid annoyed Granfell in earnest, but Jessie Hines took advantage of her magic and deprived the demon of the Count as scorus of life. So the Count of Asura was destroyed. Granfell's contribution to this was also taken into account, and his level flew up sharply, and also awards for this quest were given. And yet it was a little surprising that Jessie defeated the Count being in a weakened state. The demon of the 430th levels demolished another blow. Probably this is the power of a very high level. Jessie sat in front of a heap of ash, all that remains of the mighty demon. And at some point, Jessie Hines dipped a finger into the ashes and brought it to her mouth. Granfell was not up to that, but Ho-yol was shocked. A new class quest was available in the profile. Stirring, he read the following. The curtain rises and lights the lighthouse. The last demon hunter should illuminate this world mired in evil. There were screams. Guild players shining on the run shouted that all the settings turned off. Did Jessie defeat Asura? They also saw Granfell, and Jessie turned to him and tried to comply with all the rules of etiquette. She introduced herself and politely asked to do the same thing. She lacked good manners according to Granfell, but he saw that she was ready for changes and he was ready to teach her. And he introduced himself as the name Lee Ho-yol, your real name. In one of the apartments of a high-rise building, while her mother was busy lunch, the little girl Erin watched the news in which they described in detail what was happening at the Asura fortress. The baby quickly rushed to her mother and said that she saw Uncle Lee Ho-yolya in the news. The woman who was one of the sisters, Lee Ho-yolya, did not believe her daughter first and headed for the TV. Again, all the news was only about him. Granfell, he is also Ho-yol. They were amazed. Granfell himself, surprisingly, instead of rest, was again busy with household chores, cleaning, cooking. Having taken the phone in his hands, Granfell saw that he was calling his sister number 2, so she was signed with him. No wonder. Itz has arrived for an hour. In all news, only his face flashes. The missed calls were not from one, but from all 3 sisters. It was a matter of time when they find out that Ho-yol became a player. Since childhood, Lee Ho-yol was very friendly with older sisters, although if in truth the sisters were more likely friendly, and Lee Ho-yol, as the youngest, followed them on the heels for which he received. I didn't really want to take the phone because Lee Ho-yol knew that the sisters would grumble. Suddenly, someone persistently shook into the front door. The sister's evil voice was heard from the outside and she demanded that he urgently open it. We'll have to do it. But here's a surprise. All 3 stood outside the door. Red-haired Yoon-hee with his daughter brunette Lee Ji-yoon, and brown-haired Lee Lim. They were angry. It was clear at first glance. Of course, Granfell opened the door and pointed out that the girls interfere with the neighbors with their screams, and he asked everyone to calm down. And in the news, new information was already transmitted about the mysterious player who, together with Jessie, defeated Count Asker. It became known to his name Lee Ho-yol, but this information was not a new chawl for us who gloomily watched the TV. Lee Ho-yol has become a real sensation, of which the whole world is following. The younger brother Tae-ming prepared us chola cacao to cheer up a little. Chol was in despondency for us because all the wax and spoke about Lee Ho-yol and completely forgot about Gon. In addition, both brothers were still burning with the idea that Lee Ho-il enters their guild. And Tae-min was so confident to us that the probability that the new celebrity would choose the Gon guild is huge. We had Tae-mina. He found a reason to call Ho-yol. On the square in the county, they gathered a lot of trophies that were earned precisely thanks to whether Ho-yol. Therefore, corresponding to all the norms of etiquette, now you need to share with Lee Hyol. Even if they fail to attract him to his guild, Tae-ming is ready to do everything to remember Gaon. And now Tae-ming ordered us to our brother Chole to call Ho-yol right now. And he called. As always, Ho Yol was not up to him. Even in the form of proud Granfell, he could not resist the charm of his little niece, who had already taken possession of all his attention. Of course, the sisters noticed changes in the appearance of his brother and a new hair color, and in a friendly manner they teased him, and of course they noticed his strange manner of speech. According to the girls, Lee Ho Yol became too serious. They did not know that now it was rather Granfell than their brother. One of the sisters, Lee Lim, was the first to guess that Lee Ho Yolya merged with his character, as a result of which he behaves so strangely in looks. In addition, the sisters remembered that about 10 years ago, Lee Ho Yol called himself Granfell and wanted to paint an ashen. Whether these cute ridges were more likely to be very offended than touched, why did they just come? All this fun did not share the Lim and asked about how dangerous it was. All that Ho Yol does. Lee Ji Yun and Lee Yun Hyo also immediately became scolded. In fact, the sisters seeing the news were frightened for his brother because the players often receive injuries. And Lee Ho Yol also did not answer calls. The girls thought that something happened to him. Parents did not yet know about whether Ho Yol player, but the sisters promised to talk to them and reassure. They also reminded that if he needs help, he can always rely on any of them. Then Lee Ho Yol asked him not worried about him and said that Granfell Claudie Arfus Romeo was his calling. What puzzled the sisters? His speech was unusual for them. Having finished with tea, Lee Ji Yong, Lee Yun Hyo, and Lee Lin got home. Granfell politely said goodbye to everyone, not forgetting his niece. When Lee Lin finally advised whether he had a hoe to save savings at first, he did not understand. And then it dawned on him. A reward for stripping a gap, the source of income of the players that the Arcana provides. And the higher the gap level, the more money they give. The company developer Cosmo failed and said that director Ryman Sean gives money from his pocket. But this is not important. Lee Hyel was always interested in how much players get. He opened the application of the bank and saw in his account more than 100 billion out. The guild Shining Now were in their South Korean branch. Camilla tried to find out from Jessie what else she knows about Lee Ho Yol, with whom she struck Count Asker. She certainly knew nothing but a name. Mage Jessie Highness was busy watching the videos on YouTube, and she gently asked Camilla not to prevent her from focusing. What surprised Camilla is that Jessie watched not something interesting, but the videos about how it is customary to say hello in Korea. Continuing the viewing, Jessie received a notification of obtaining a reward for stripping a fault, also 110 billion out. This amount shocked not accustomed to the wealth of Lee Ho Yolya. This Ryman is probably an incredible rich man, but Lee Ho Yol thought that there would be enough trophies received after the launch of the fault. The majestic Granfell considered it unworthy that he was happy because of some money. It was difficult for them to get along in the same body with Lee Ho Yol. After the humiliation of Asura, Granfell also received the trophy of the vampire. It was a unique object with a curse. In the 12th chapter, he would simply throw the damned object, but now, during the battle with Count Asker, such an object, more precisely the necklace, just helped to cope with it. The curse from him was now removed. Now this is a protective item for a lover. After the difficult for Lee Ho Yolya, insomnia tormented. He thought what to do with money, pay to give the family to buy useful items or open a savings account. Granfell did not worry at all. Of course, it would be the most reasonable to buy equipment in order to clean the faults, but whether it was a pity to spend money on equipment that suited its level, given how quickly and often it raises the level, this is irrational. A meeting was held at the Korean branch of Arcana. They studied the video with the participation of Granfell and how he built stone walls from nothing. Someone made a bet on spells. Someone claimed that with the help of spells, it was impossible to do this. After all, magical power has its limits. In general, the Jallet stood the incredible. Everyone argued among themselves and tried to shout out each other. And some have already taken out the fact that only the conversations on every corner, only about Lee Ho Yol. There was not even a player with the name Lee Ho Yol in the Arcana database, so no one knew if this name is at all or is it a nickname. Today, Thursday, and workers are waiting for the next update of the game. Then, everything will have to calm down all these rumors about Lee Ho Yol. Everyone will focus on new tasks. And here's this update. A new location of the island of Yuzura appeared. This location was not completely new. At the time when Arkan was just a game of this area was mentioned as an island of treasures. No one has managed to find them yet, but on this island, precious stones grew with which none of the existing in the world could compare. And now this island has appeared in reality. As reported in the news along with the advent of the island of Yuzura from this week, regular conferences of magicians will be held. Experienced magicians will be going to discuss issues of what will help in the development of magical skills. This is the first conference from the moment Arcana appeared in the real world, which caused considerable interest of society. One of the players of those who received the invitation was Jessie Haynes, who ranked 4th in the ranking, and which has already arrived in the tower. Jessie refused comments, and Lee Ho Yol understood why she was so strong. She is in the top 4. Even when Arcana was a game, Lee Ho Yol remembered one phrase, and that was true. For the tower, not skills are important, but magic. Before moving to the conference, Granfell first set to clean. Lee Ho Yol did not even arise because he had already reconciled with this jump of his character. Near the Tower of Magicians, there were always a lot of people, and before the conference, there were especially a lot of spectators. One of the experienced magicians of the Claire Tower was madly glad that the conferences were finally resumed. She sat in front of the pink weightless wall of the illusion created by the owner of the tower. It is difficult to go through it without an invitation. But for Jessie Heines, this was not a problem. Jessie projected Claire invitation, and she led her to the Crystal Hall. The task of Claire today was to accompany all the hunters there. Since Jessie arrived the latter from the list of invited, Claire intended to go with Jessie. But she asked Claire to wait a little more since she had suspicions that another guest would arrive. So it was. Granfell was already in the tower. There were so many people inside that he could hardly squeeze to the right place. And then people began to recognize him. After all, Ho Yolya was shown in the news very often the last days. Some even asked for an autograph or a photo with him. But Granfell rudely sprinkled everyone in rude, and even more attracted interest in his person. People went crazy about him, and even asked them to scold them. Granfell had real fans. With his sensitive gaze, Granfell noticed that one of the walls differs from the others, and he walked through it, met a surprised Claire there. Jessie was right. The illusion was amazing, and Granfell himself recognized this. Claire did not find him in the list of invited. After all, she was surprised without an invitation. Even magicians cannot go through this wall, not just a person. At first glance, the impudent Granfell fascinated Claire, and she could not refuse him to take him to the conference. He was the first to be able to deceive the magic of illusions on her memory. Here they are in place. The host of the conference greeted everyone in the Crystal Hall of the Place of Exalted Knowledge. When Arcana became reality by its inhabitants, who were inside the game, also moved to this new reality. Among them was one person who had great influence. It was Marcelo, the youngest magician of which was called the future successor of the Tower of Magicians. He absolutely corresponded to the nickname of the genius, and the very first understood in what situation the world is. And in order to take measures, he used all his knowledge by the organizer of scientific conferences, at which new achievements in the field of magic were expressed. Jessie was told by the old magic hat that was on her head, but Jessie was bored, and I wanted to sleep. The host of the conference, of course, has remained Marcelo until now. He said that this conference will be associated not only with magic but also with science, since it is necessary to combine all kinds of ties and make efforts to save the world. Mergers. So Marcelo called this new type of magic. This is a new outbreak resulting from a harmonious fusion of science and magic, but it is wary of such a merger. It is not known what consequences can entail the combination of two completely different spheres. Jessie came to the conclusion that Marcello is really a young, promising magician. I thought of combining magic and science. Marcelo also said that he needed help. No one understood the quest, or not, for even the quest windows did not appear. Marcelo suggested raising the hands of those who have questions. The first question was from Granfell. In his opinion, there were many errors in Marcello's research. People turned on to Granfell stunned. He came uninvited and also pointed out the magician to a mistake. It was a scandal. The Magus Marcello himself was asked a tricky question. With his character, he will not be silent. It was noticeable that the magician slowly boiled. He asked Granfell to explain about such mistakes. He speaks. He explained that the whole point is that the difference is very noticeable. Magic and science are two completely different spheres. During their merger, this difference was manifested, which led to a waste of time. This was Granfell's thought. In addition, Granfell somehow had to experience the difference between skill and magic, and he showed the same outbreak as Marcello demonstrated a minute before. The magician did not believe his eyes. It took him so much time to activate. And this guy had just made it so simple in a second. And then Marcello realized that somewhere I had already seen this person. And then Marcello even remembered his name, Lee Ho Yol. Marcello guessed that Ho Yol uses centrifugal force during interaction. The process itself looks inept, but the result is pretty good. Granfell, flattered by attention, realized that it was not for nothing that he came to the conference. And something was strange. It consisted in the fact that Marcello suggested Ho Yol to take part in his research, and Lee Ho Yol accepted his proposal. All the same, he definitely came in vain. By the first impression, the island of the user is a truly paradise place. Palm trees, sand, ocean, hot sun. Guildberserk has already arrived on the island for the quest. Do not relax as we would like. There were unrealistic people on the island. Players, ordinary vacationing journalists, bloggers, anyone. Only Leonie, as always, was without a mood. But that was her usual state in life. The Lionheart Order was also here, and the Order of the Shadow Mercenaries too. And ahead is also a union of hunters. Since Yuzra was also known in Arkan as the Island of Treasures, for sure everyone came here for treasures. That is, maybe players will now have to compete with ordinary residents. Leonie's Mall entered the smartwatch. It was Jessie. She, in wild delight, told everything that was at the conference, and about Lee Ho Yoli. The fact that Ho Yol dared to argue with the older magician of the Tower of Leonie, and she was surprised to learn that he received a new quest from the magician. At this time, Granfell Lee Ho Yol was in the office of Marcello. The magician offered his help in finding the necessary items and ingredients for research, and if he himself proposed either, Ho-Yol did not become modest and wrote what needed to be found right now. On the very top floor of the Tower of Magicians, Marcelo was a conversation with the noblest of the magicians by 5 elders. They called him about his proposal to the hunter to participate in the study. Marcelo violated the rule of the tower. The Tower of Magicians does not interfere in the affairs of the hunters. Marseille explained that Ho-Yol understands the basics of magic and also distinguishes them perfectly. His abilities in magic can provide great assistance in a world situation. The Supreme Mage respected Marcelo but pointed out that in the end, he would be responsible for his decisions. It was noticeable that the magician did not approve of Marcelo's act. The conversation was finished on this. Marcelo was angry with the Supreme Magicians. How they dare to talk about responsibility when they themselves are in the illusory world and ignore reality. And he was disturbed by the fact that the owner of the tower was silent. The cheerful Claire jumped up to Marcelo. She was on this floor because she collected things that Ho-Yol asked. Then Marcelo suggested Claire to take the things of Ho-Yol himself. Claire handed him the box. By decomposing objects on the table, Marcelo demonstrated them Ho-Yole, magic tools associated with the restoration of magical power, frozen knowledge, forbidden knowledge, and the essence of the sun, as well as books about magic. All these items were a very high rank with restrictions on level. It was a check from Marcello. Li Ho-Yol was 134th level. Items opened at least 595 and above. And then Marcelo said that he had overestimated Li Ho-Yolya, who became furious from this. Marcelo handed him a hexagonal brooch, which was the subject of restoration of magical forces, and approached Hu in level. This subject was needed whether Ho-Yol was needed. With him, he will be able to restore magic by 10% without restrictions on options. It's not bad. When Li Ho-Yol understood the foundations of Martello magic, he realized that Ho-Yol is an unusual person, but Marcelo did not think that he knew about this subject, and whether Ho-Yolya thanked for the consent to cooperate. Li Ho-Yol himself did not understand what was so great in this subject, but Granfell knew. However, Marcelo also said that now it would not be possible to work normally because of errors in research, and Li Ho-Yolya's quest is postponed to a special order. Of course, Granfell did not know about the conversation of Marcello with the Supreme Magicians, and was ready to wait until Marcelo corrects his defects. Marcelo himself believed that with Li Ho, Yolya could change the tower. One of the most faithful fans of Huigan was sitting on the shore of the users and was waiting for the appearance of Li Ho Yolya. He led a live broadcast where the same admirers of Ho Yolya gathered. Thousands of players from different countries arrived all day through the portal of the islands. But Ho-Yolya was not yet. Hearing from Huigan the name of the new celebrity, Kinber approached him. A new rising star guy in a mask. He was wildly infuriated that all the attention is now to Li Ho-Yu. He himself longed for fame. After Arcana became a reality, new faces appeared. They went to everything for their goals and constantly found themselves in the center of incidents. Kinber was especially said about him that he was the most cruel of them. The players went into the gap with Kinber and his gang and disappeared, and there were already many of them. And now Kinber asked Huigan to convey to Li Ho-Yol that if he would perform too much, then everyone will quickly get tired. Viewers of the broadcast who heard all this began to discuss the likelihood that all these gangs would only be reduced and go against Li Ho-Yol. Huigan himself even expressed the idea that it was because of this that Ho-Yol did not appear on the island. The real reason was that Granfell had not yet seen the point of going to Yuzra. And Ho-Yol himself was the same opinion. He enjoyed the long, awaited vacation. Anyway, a player with 134th levels will not be able to go into the gap of 305th levels. In addition, there are no demons there. And after this thought of Ho-Yolya, a class movements appeared on the profile screen. The curtain rises, the chimney flare up. This is a hunt for the last demon. To the wrap of this world covered with evil. Trin your weak body. Find out what kind of great evil is lurking on the island of the Yuzra. Akshan spoke about the 7 fatal sins that are called Great Evil. Fiddy sins, pride, envious, anger, gluttony, lust, and laziness. Lust and laziness. Now you will have to explore the great evil that belongs to the 7 fatal sins. Li Ho-Yol believed that he defeated Askur with difficulty and by chance. And now also that. Even if this is a class quest, should think, well, whether it is worth it. But Granfell was a different opinion. Now there's no reason to think if there is a demon. If evil on the island exists, then it must be destroyed in any case. Taking the most necessary, that is, the bags of tea, Granfell advanced to the island of Yuzra in a suit. On the tropical island, but whether Ho-Yol did not manage to convince him. Outside with joy was Huigan. He was sure that his favorite player would appear, and he appeared. On the whole island, Granfell felt the presence of evil. The skill of communication with the predator was activated. Such a strong influence differed from ordinary demons. This is a huge force that was felt underfoot. Perhaps this whole island is continuous evil. In this case, the connection with the predator is the most. Making his way to the hinterlands of the island for Lee Holes on the heels was followed by Hui Gon continuing to lead a stream. The monsters on this island were incredibly high levels, and Granfell simply could not find a suitable opponent for the battle. Behind him, he heard fuss and whispering. Having turned around, Granfell saw not Hui Gon, who skillfully hid, but some kind of red-haired guy who jumped out of the bushes right at him. Another fled behind him. They both hid from a huge emerald tiger of the 420th level, his roar practically demolished from his feet. One of the guys saw Hoyolia. Lee Hoyol himself, or Granfell, did not expect to meet the most high-level monster so quickly. The emerald tiger was getting closer now to the whole trinity. The difference with the graph is only 10 levels. It will not be possible to run away, so that in any case, it will be necessary to try. The situation was not the best. Due to the bright sun and the brilliance of the radiant body of the tiger, nothing was visible. However, if you immobilize the beast, then there will be little use from its skills. What Granfell did and amazed the spectators of Hui Gon and two awesome guys. Further, Granfell used the magic of ignition. A frantic fire swept around. The tiger burned and was destroyed. The same ignition of Marcello taught. The level of Granfell increased, and the restoration of 10% of the brooch was also felt. The guys could not believe their eyes. His Hoyol just destroyed an emerald tiger of the 420th level? Guildmaster of the guild, the second son Sreg with his associates for several hours has been breaking circles on the island. He was offered to combine with the detachments that moved separately. The Shining Guild has already cleaned almost the entire center of the island during this time. In vain, the second son was divided. It was precisely to their guys who met Granfell. They planned to break the past achievement of the guild Berserk, but apparently Sreg greatly underestimated Yuzra. I did not want to admit Sreg, but he showed greed and now he will have to get unlawed. A detachment who went to the west contacted them, and the guys reported that that route was completed. And of course they told about the meeting with the tiger and Lee Hoyol, and showed the consequences of the fiery spell of Granfell. And behind this came a report from the guild that visited the conference in the tower. It was reported that Hoyol received a quest from Marcello, and a personal laboratory at the very top of the tower. Sreg is stunned. Then Sreg ordered to transfer the guild to the analytical department to check everything about whether Hoyolia, and reported to him. Hoyol is more dangerous than everyone talks about him. The material of the unique rank received Granfell for the tiger, pure emerald. Lee Hoyol could not dream of this. Too few masters who can cope with it, but if the tower requests the production of the subject as part of the study, then it will be cool. The air changed dramatically and Granfell felt it. Some kind of shiver went all over the body. Suddenly a window with a class quest appeared again. Strange. Probably evil is close. Suddenly the earth began to shake. The island of Yuzra began to absorb greed. The process of destruction has gone. All players received this notification, and the destruction process grew up very quickly. The island was not a gap, but simply by a new territory, and no one understood what the process and percentage of destruction could then mean. Only Granfell realized that greed was awakened by the petty desires of people who arrived a lot to the island, and some also for the purpose of profit. A scale of 10 cells shown in the profile. The next pop-up window reported that the island of Yuzra began to absorb greed. Granfell knew that this was a demon of greed. One cell was filled. Still nearby, Hui Gon tried to find out what was happening. In the comments, someone wrote that one of the 10 islands of the user Shining have already been cleaned. If the destruction process is completely filled, the great evil will wake up, and Granfell intended to stop it. In his class mission, the appearance clarification of the fact that he should stop the awakening of greed. Around Granfell, I only heard conversations that Shining cleaned up one island and found treasures. All other players were afraid not to have time to grab themselves with the rewards from the remaining 9 islands. This was a common reaction to the possibility of obtaining a treasure. Everyone wanted to find them, from players to ordinary people. All players on the island of Yuzra think the same. In order to prevent greed to get to the treasure, it is necessary to release your own desire. But it is impossible to convince all players of this. What to do? The only way remained. Granfell will pick up all the treasures himself. There was no other choice, for the guilds have already shared unwashed treasures among themselves and plumped even more greed. On the second island, the Uzer's detachment of the guilds Shining talked about destruction. Camilla noted that it is logical that 10 cells are, after all, the Yuzra consists of 10 islands. In the process of destroying and obtaining treasures, each of the cells is painted as soon as the next treasure is obtained. But Rox did not particularly listen to Camilla. He was more worried about Jesse's report about whether Hoyol received a quest in the tower and went to the top floor as a new researcher. Then Rox thought about that, whether they would have won Lee Hoyolia if you go against him. To put it mildly, his associates did not support this idea and hoped that he was just joking. Moreover, their Jesse Heineness was on the side of Lee Hoyolia, and if you go against him, Jesse may be on his side. Rox agreed that it was a stupid idea to go against Lee Hoyolia. And moreover, Rox admitted that he said it was simply out of envy. Well, another cell was filled at that moment. Someone got a treasure. These were the heavenly departed. It's time for them to move. Well, Lee Ho-yol tried to stop Granfell. Why take all the treasures to yourself? He was worried that Granfell also took over greed. Then all the cells will be filled and the demon will wake up. Ahead of him, Granfell saw people, flag and armor in the form of a lion's head. This is the Order of the Lion Heart, the best order of the time of the Arcana, and also his commander Harkon Kingsguard. The knights were outraged that Lee Ho-yol did not show due respect to their commander, but Harkon besieged them, and he asked Lee Ho-yolya his name. He of course introduced himself and expressed his respect to the order and commander. And then Harkon noticed a brooch on Lee Ho-yolya's jacket. But before they could continue the conversation, as a wild trembling rang out from under the ground, a huge monster crawled out, the owner of the island. It was a turtle, a huge turtle with golden fangs of 450 levels. Harkon ordered the order to prepare for battle. The turtle was about to start a meteorite. Incredible power. Stones fell from the sky. Due to meteorites, it was impossible to approach the turtle by a meter. Hanoka leaned stones. The turtle stepped on him. Suddenly, Granfell came forward and built a huge stone wall between the monster and the order. The turtle continued to attack. Meteorites again. Granfell again increased the strength of the wall to maximum and spent too many magical forces. If not for the brooch, then he would have fallen without strength. It is necessary to save magic and let the order fight. Harkon came up from the back to Lee Ho-yolya. He brought his gratitude for the salvation from himself and from the order. If he helps them in this battle, they will never forget his kindness. And took an oath. It was cool. Granfell told Harkon that the Lionheart Order will be happy to help the order. All this action continued to shoot Huigon live. Harkon swore on the heart of Lee Ho-yol. The audience was delighted. Because of the owner of the island, it was dangerous to get closer. But this did not affect the review of the battle. The knights attacked the turtle, weak places, head, and crown. Granfell indicated that it was necessary to beat on the legs and then above. By the way, not all knights understood why Harkon brought a Ho oath to his heart, the oath of which is brought only to the emperor. In the name of Leo, the knights attacked again, as should be aimed at the legs and then in the head. The Order of the Lion's Heart was strong, but Lee Ho-yol expected more from them. They are used to fighting at the near distance. The spare troops simply stood behind and waited until they reached the turn to attack. They will need a lot of time to completely hit the enemy. The status window surfaced. Already half of the cells was filled. Treasures are found too fast. At such a pace, the islands will soon end to this. It is necessary to create a space for the attack of the order. An earthquake was approaching. Lava rose from under the ground. It was necessary to stand tightly on his feet, which was difficult. Space. Lee Ho-yol remembered the staircase in the Tower of Magicians. He called Harkon. It was necessary to prepare for the offensive again. The knights looked in amazement at the sky. From the ground to the head of the turtle, Lee Ho-yol created a staircase, the same as in the Tower of Magicians. Spectators' stream also squealed with delight. No one believed that an ordinary hunter was capable of such magic. Who is he really? And Granfell was rapidly ending in mana. Harkon should hurry. The path was open. The knights rushed into battle again. You can't miss a chance. The knights attacked the monster's head and attacked swords. Harkon struck the last blow and the monster fell. Suddenly, weather notifications began to come. The knights abandoned their contribution to the destruction of the monster in favor of Lee Ho-yol. This is their gratitude. Granfell's level has grown. What happened was incomprehensible for Lee Ho-yolya. Harkon reported that he recognized his brooch. This was one of the gifts that the emperor handed over to the Tower of Magicians in the distant past. Now the knights owe Granfell lives, and instantly, all the participants in the order stood one knee in front of Lee Ho-yol. Now the Order of the Lion Heart will remain with him. A giant turtle with huge fangs was destroyed with the highest contribution. Lee Ho-yol received the treasure of this island. What is the best way to do? If you take it, another cage. But if you do not take it, it will be done by another person, and still a great evil will wake up. 6 cells are already filled. And Granfell took the treasure in his hands. But nothing happened. For Granfella Claudi Arpheus Romeo, wealth is fleeting. For him, a great heir and who knew all the charms of wealth. A feeling of greed is unknown to Granfell. It was a way to prevent greed to absorb all the treasures, as it turned out. It is necessary to pick up the treasure without a hint of greed. He succeeded. Ho-yol took the treasure, greedily watched Kinber. He ruined more than one player to get here. As Kinber Lee Ho-yol planned, he will gather all the treasures and then Kinber will take him all at once. It will be more convenient. Kinber gathered 32 trophies for his deeds. In his hands, Granfell held an old broken crown. Lee Ho-yolya disappointed the appearance of this treasure. It did not carry any function and value. Another surprise. The Order of the Lion Heart joined the detachment of Ho-yolya. He saved their life and showed a pure heart in which there is no thirst to get treasures. It doesn't matter what a goal is a goal, but at least here on the island of the Yuzure, they will now become his shield and a sword. The best order of the empire now followed him. It was incredible. All knights of the order have very high levels. Now, Granfell can easily cope with the monsters of the island. This is very on his hands. It is more likely to move to the next island. Meanwhile, Kinber continued to watch them. There were already rumors that Ho-Yol got a treasure, but the process of destruction did not move. Kinber's associates experienced. After all, now the Order of the Lionheart is with Ho-It. But Kinber already had a plan. As soon as everyone sits in a boat to sail to another island throughout the boat, a destructive poison will spread when they inhale him to an end to everyone. And then Kinber noticed that Ho-Yol was looking at him. More precisely, it seemed to him that way. Maybe. It seemed to him that he was grabbed by the throat, how they could notice him at such a distance. And this is an ominous expression on the face of Lee Ho-Yolya. Not only Ho-Yol noticed Kinber, but also Harkon. But Ho-Yol noticed that you should not waste time on it. This rat on a tree was not worth their attention. There were more important things at the moment. Too low, the level of psychological forces did not allow Kinber to breathe, and Lee Ho-Yol and Harkon followed him now he knew it, and they spared him. Strong fear constrained him. The island of Yuzura begins to absorb greed. Already 8 destruction cells have been filled. If you take into account that crown, then only 1 treasure remained untouched. It is good that 1 treasure has a hoe and a cage is empty. I could not believe that he was left alive, Kinber. Perhaps he is not at all worthy of any attention. Whatever the reason, Kinber was very grateful. He washed his hands, his associates, with whom he agreed on the eve of his rage. What nonsense. He told one of his own that he was no longer in business and hung up. Pak Hyun-jun was very angry and broke the phone on the ground. So much money was invested in this matter. On this poison, he even had to take a private loan. They tried to reassure him, but only even more angry. Of course, after all, it was not they who lost a lot of money. In addition, Pak Hyun-jun enraged that everyone was so calm. He even suspected that Kinber paid them to throw him. He began to crazy. At the other end of the island, Lee Ho-Yol felt something. There was a notification. The influence of great evil was scattered throughout the island of Yuzura. A natural enemy is activated. Just an ordinary notification that was and when, whether Ho-Yol only entered the island. But still, there was something wrong. He felt evil even more, as if the intuition of a demon hunter sent a notification. The demon is nearby. The distraught Pak Hyun-jun tore and metal, rushing at his comrades, suspecting those of treason, and he deprived them of one of them in a fit of anger. Once we witnessed this, Huigon was very scared, but he continued to strive. The audience advised him to run. It was obvious that in the body of Pak Hyun-jun was no longer just an ordinary robber, but a ruthless demon. And Huigon ran with all his feet. He fled and fled until he fell through the branch, and he fell right in his arms to a person. Fortunately, he came across the League. He will not be so scary with them. He was offered to sit down and relax. Now, everything will be fine. Huigon saved. Arcana Tue has a next news release today. The last view of the island of Yuzura would be on the screens. Yuzura is divided into 10 islands. Each treasure is hidden. Some guilds have already found treasures. And then the last island and the last treasure remained. The guild has just arrived here shining, led by the ambitious leader Rox, and other players and guilds. Nearby is the Inazum guild, and behind her and Gaon. Isanum, unlike Gaon, had not yet managed to find their treasure. The head of his saga had a displeased expression on his face. Then the Berserker and the second son arrived. Everyone was wondering which guild would take the last treasure. Here, the attention of everyone was attracted by a group of people who went ashore. It was an unexpected turn. The strongest order in the world appeared on the island. It was known that only Karkon had about 600th level. It was incredible. The leader of Gon, those minds to us, even thought for a moment that he would like all this. But that was not all. The order was headed by no one else like Ho-Yol. All the news and players all looked at this company with wide eyes. All the rankers immediately paid attention to Ho-Yolya. His gaze said that he was sure that he would take the last treasure. Whether Ho-Yol himself even became a little uneasy of such attention. Of course, everyone watched. Such a team will make all guilds worry. Hisagi decided that you need to be with his guard. The Shining also understood that they would not go against the order. Camilla so sympathized with Lee Ho-Yol. Unlike Granfella, Lee Ho-Yol began to worry that everyone would find out that he was actually a crook and a weakness. But Harkon's scream distracted him. Lava escaped from under the ground again. Everyone is ordered to run into shelter, change equipment to fire. Again, the owner of the island. The giant lava carp of the 420th level escaped the harm of the lava outside. Around it became very hot. The continuous lava blame everywhere, and it was impossible to get to this fish in any way. We need to observe the situation. The knights and nearby fighters were preparing to attack. How to fight if it is impossible to approach until no one knew. Even through the screen, the viewers felt the heat of this lava. Carp sailed in lake lava. Sir Karkon was ashamed that he promised to be a sword and a shield of Lee Ho-Yolya, and he could not even approach that monster. But Lee Ho-Yol reassured him. After all, Granfell had a plan. He raised his hand. The use of magic can be divided into 3 stages. Search for intervention and manifestation. Lava around the carp is not a skill, is part of nature. That is, for Granfell, this lava is nothing more than scattered stones. He picked up the lava into the air and opened the warriors to the monster. Everyone dropped his jaw. so simply took and raised all the fiery lake above the head level. But the mana of Granfell ended. It would be better if Harkon hurried. Incredible sight. The path to the owner of the island was created. Harkon ran ahead of the Shining and Gaon and Berserk. Those men really wanted to get a bonus for the first blow. Suddenly, Karp jumped high into the sky. Stones from his body began to pour around. Karp rode up and down there without stopping. It is impossible to get to him again. It looks like the battle will last much longer. But Granfell did not sit back. Spears from stones flew into the fish. Granfell created these spears directly from the cooled lava. It was a change of condition. Magic. Granfell cooled the lava to turn into stone, and while the fish was immobilized, Harkon approached her and killed. The Laurel Carp was defeated. All players did not have a reward due to a low contribution to destruction. Rox was ashamed. Having a 0 contribution for Shining is a shame. The cameras were filmed. The audience is delighted. The Order of the Lionheart and Lee Ho-Yol became the greatest contribution. Ho-Yol himself stood as calm as possible, but inside he was squeezed like a lemon. There are almost no mana left. Granfell received a reward for the victory of the Laurel Carp, the next treasure of the island of Yuzra. It looks like this is the last treasure. Granfell took the treasure in his hands, and the next cage was filled on a destruction scale. But the number of treasures still did not match. But this cannot be. Granfell could not experience greed when he took a treasure. It also did not affect the process of destruction. It's different. Demonic energy. Some other treasure was absorbed by greed once again. So it was. The Pak, stupefied by the demon, took the League treasure, destroying their member. The treasure of the island and other 14 objects was selected by Park Hyun-jun. But Pak himself did not understand what was happening. His body did not obey him, and there was a fog in his head. Someone inside his head convinced that exactly that one wanted them. It was greed, one of the fatal sins, too low mental resistance. The demon was going to take his own, but Essica Bright prevented him. The Order of the Lionheart and Lee Ho-El is already here. Huigon breathed out with an attach. The terrible smell of the demon here was felt by Granfell. The stream Huigana resumed. The demon was still alive. Lee Ho-Yol received a new class quest. The extraordinary evil of the island of the Yuzra boiled. The treasure of the island in his hands was heated and scattered into pieces. The treasure was defiled by greed. Lee Hyel should prevent this according to the quest, and prevent evil from waking up completely. Destruction began. A huge black hand got out of the center of the island, and then a few more. They began to connect the islands into one. The earth began to shake. Something rose in the center of the united island. Golden Castle. The castle is completely made of gold, rolling the sight despite the entire position of the players. All around were enchanted. Even Granfell himself did not understand anything. This is a palace of greed. The palace in which unbridled greed was sitting on the throne. Around there was a very sinister aura that I did not even want to approach. The leader of the Lion's Heart, Harkon, said that something was approaching. It is necessary to prepare for the battle. Undead. Huge crowds of frantic and executed undead fled to the players from all sides. They crawled out literally from under the ground. There were very many of them. No one expected such a turn. And in Arcantudia is the next issue. Their director came to the phone. This is from the Arcana's office. A new renewal of Arcana came out. At such a pace, soon everyone will die. I saw it and Ho-Yol, updating a new fault, the Golden Palace on the Yuzra archipelago. But the new monsters were from the 600-year level and above. It was necessary to evacuate civilians. The players retreated. The levels of enemies were very scared. It was impossible to win in this position. You need to think everything over. Lee Ho-Yol approached the head of the Lion's Heart and asked Lee his oath. Harkon had to be kept at all costs. According to Lee Ho-Yolya Harkon, he realized that he was planning to fight. After all, demons must be destroyed. There is no other way. Seeing the determination of Lee Ho-Yolya Harkon assured him that the Order of the Lionheart will remain with him and help defeat the demon. And then Harkon ordered the knights to do everything so that Ho-Yol reached his enemy. They were going to enter the palace, and the knights rushed off with an attack on a crowd of undead under the guidance of Lee Ho-Yolya. The whole world watched as the Order of the Lionheart and Lee Ho-Yol was trying to break through to the castle. Do they really want to capture the Golden Palace? Meanwhile, there were rumors that the island wanted to isolate and cordon off for the sake of safety. The Order of the Lionheart fought better than Granfell even expected. The crowd of undead grew down. The first-class knights of the continent are incomparable in a walk. The restoration of Mana Granfell was also promoted quite smoothly. At this pace, he will soon enter the battle. Other guilds did not dare to join the battle. It was too risky. Most believed that the Order would fail. And then the undead began to resurrect, but mana has not yet been enough. And then 2 guilds entered the battle, Berserk and Gaon. It was a good reinforcement. There were many fighters from a friend of guilds. Gaon and Berserk followed Ho-Yol in the Golden Palace. For the audience, it was an unexpected turn. An interesting coincidence of both guilds was the story of cooperation with Lee Ho-El in raids. Granfell was calm. Taemin really wanted to make a good impression on him and remember. Gilda priests imposed a blessing and protection. In order to completely and without loss to destroy the undead without God's help, one could not do. Lee Ho-Yol wanted to strengthen the knights, and the Knights Gan offered their help. Their priest gave God's blessing. Now they could fight quietly. Combat abilities against undead have increased. The fact that Gaon managed to help Ho Yul was the first to enrage the Berserker, and especially their leader. Fighting with the help of a blessing was a completely different matter. Tai Ming offered us any help. Ho Yul said that he did not believe in God. Harkon heard his words, and his thoughts were transferred to the past. He was in the throne room of His Majesty the Emperor. In the northwestern canyon, the leader of the army of demons appeared, and Harkon suggested that the Emperor go there and destroy him immediately. Only an order was needed. But the Emperor did not want the warriors to be killed at the hands of the demon once again. Demons appeared and adventurers disappeared. Even the Tower of Wizards investigating this phenomenon disappeared in a moment. And as if this was not enough throughout the Empire, people began to disappear without a trace. The Emperor asked God every night to stop, but God never gave an answer and did not help. Maybe he threw his people, or it was not originally the reason for all demons. And after these words, Harkon once again promised that he would go to the northwest and destroy this demon, and will open the way to God. But the sovereign no longer believed in God. However, he believed in Harkon himself. Harkon woke up from his memory. The battle was in full swing. How he appeared. The leader of the demons. Harkon wanted to deal with him personally, but it was too late. The demon grinned gloomily and penetrated the consciousness of the leader of the Order of the Lionheart. The Order seemed to be in the real world, in the middle of the park among ordinary people who were no less shocked than the members of the Order themselves. Harkon should return. He will not let the demon defeat his consciousness. Harkon's mind fought. Granfell tried to reach him and remind you who he really is. No one in the Yuzra also understood what was happening and what was with Harkon. Why exactly strong Harkon became obsessed. Metal control from case to case can be stronger than obsession. Suddenly, Harkon tried to attack Li Ho Yolya, and if not for us timing, in time he had arrived in time for him to be the end. Then Harkon began to attack his associates. It seemed to him that it was all demons. In his mind, they all looked like demons. He attacked over and over again. Without listening to anyone, Harkon was in complete madness. In his mind, he was surrounded by demons, and he was obliged to defeat everyone. The stones flew around already wounded. Taimina had blood. The whole world watched through the cameras behind this action. Harkon was able to persuade only one person. Approaching Harkon, Granfell stopped him with one gesture of his palm. Everyone was stunned. What kind of power is this? The audience was also delighted. Among this blurry hordes of demons, only Li Yol saw Harkon Yasni. It was the power of a demon hunter, one of the effects of skill exorcism. The Harkon, still not recovered, demanded that he introduce himself. But Granfell was silent. It was angry with Harkon, and suddenly Harkon again saw a brooch on a jacket of Hoyolya, and he recognized her. I remembered how he gave a Ho oath. I remembered who he was and where he was, and he came to his senses completely. Sincerity worked. The level of skill exorcism has increased, added new effects at the second level, but it was not up to it. Demonial shadows were getting to Granfell closer and closer. With their tentacles, they enveloped him from all sides. Ho Yol saw where it comes from. It was a throne, and the demon was sitting on it. Granfell was in the halls of the mind of this guy. It must be a sin. Now it was a demon, but before not. This man only wanted to protect his kingdom, his user. The land and seas gave the soil with generosity, was full of shining precious stones. And people loved each other. The world reigned and everyone was happy. Until one day, the stranger did not appear on the shore. The inhabitants of the kingdom and the king himself accepted the stranger with warmth. They sent him back, providing all the help of which they were only capable. But in response, they received an invasion. The people did not know how to fight. The people who invaded the Koromia. The king was ready to share all his wealth if they only wished, but they did not need it. They needed everything. And the king went crazy with the sight of this crazy greed of people, and from the sight of his poor kingdom. Now the king himself has become the embodiment and bearer of original sin. This island, Ocean Heaven, was all his. Granfell shouted at him. He could no longer listen to how the former king regrets himself. He was taken aback by Granfell's words. All riches are in vain. Granfell showed him the only important and that no one would ever take this pride in his chest. After these words, Granfell used magic to intervene in the foundation of the Golden Palace. He was destroyed. The stones fell, the earth was trembling. The floor behind the floor was the tower behind the tower of the castle turned into ruins. Now only a huge and useless pile of stones remained from the Golden Palace. Then Granfell demanded that greed come out. See how pointless his wealth is. How many soldiers were sacrificed for the sake of the king, and he betrayed them. A demon burst from the stones in agony. His palace of his wealth was all destroyed. How that man dared to throw him a challenge. The demon was furious. He was ready to swallow everyone around. The players caught his breath. The demon influenced them. He wanted to turn everyone into undead. The only person who did not give influence is Granfell. With one cry, he stopped the demon again, activated the skill of exorcism. As an offer, I chose the sphere of the vampire, and began the rite of exile. Granfell tried to arouse the true Eye King of the Yuzra. It's time to fix your mistakes, and the demon succumbed. He left the body of the former king. But the king was depressed. His kingdom fell. He betrayed his citizens. But the man got out of their remains of original sin. Li Ho Yol coped. Hakan did not recognize himself. For so many years, he was a hostage of greed, whether the level of hell increased 10 times for the exile of the demon. And then Ho-Yol saw a quest with a time limit. There was little time. It was necessary to remind the king who he is and nest his crown on his head. Lee Ho-Yol did not immediately understand what it was about. The crown that Ho-Yol received as a treasure. Now he understood what meaning she carried. He took her out of his inventory and put King Hakun on his head. The king was transmitted. Lee Ho-Yol's quest was completed. The secrets of the Asura archipelago will be disclosed. This notification was received by all Arcana players. This means that a break was cleaned. All guilds were notified, and guild masters were a little disappointed that they did not have time for this. World notification. This was the first time. The notice was broadcast around the world at the same time. The ancient kingdom reveals itself, and then something else began to happen. The ancient kingdom of Asura was revived from under the ground. The Golden Castle replaced the palace in its original form. The new region was discovered. All cameras were directed to Lee Yolya and the king who stood near him. Lee Ho-Yol became the savior of the kingdom, and his kinship with the island was at the highest level now. The influence reached the maximum limit. A feature of the authority in the kingdom of Asura was activated. King Hakuna stood in front of Lee Ho-Yoli on one of his knees, expressing his gratitude to the savior, not only the kingdom, but also himself. When Lee Ho-Yol introduced himself, the king said that all generations of the users and subsequent generations would remember his name and feat behind them. The king is ready to correct his mistakes. Shrig hurried to the scene with his team, the first renewal of the national level in the history of the Arcana. He must have time for Asura. This country had unimaginable value in the old days of Arcana. Numerous cities and villages, as well as rare monsters, hidden treasures, and resources of the earth itself. This will bring a huge bunch of money if Shrig can help to restore it. You need to snatch your chance. So far there is an opportunity. The same thing said to King Lee Ho-Yol, that the kingdom should be restored. But the king does not believe that someone will follow him after he betrayed his people and once turned away from the subject. But according to Lee Ho-Yol, it depends only on the king of Hakun himself and on how he behaves in the future. And to help the king fix everything, whether Ho-Yol is ready to help him, the hidden quest is made. And then Shrig burst into the crowd. He began to shout that such a great kingdom should be restored, and that the Guild of the Second Sun will help everything that can. Most others have suspicions that Shrig simply dreamed of earnings on this, and they were amazed at his impudence. Shrig also decided that he should meet Lee Ho-Yole. Approaching Lee Ho-Yol, Shrig unceremoniously grabbed him by the hand and began to shake. It was clear to everyone that mannered Ho-Yol would not like it. The atmosphere was slightly villed. Whether Ho-Yol barely kept on his feet and hardly understood what was happening. He just lost too much mana conducting a rite of exorcism. Fatigue caught up with him. Lee Ho-Yol was worried that he could be cut down right now. You need to urgently get home and sleep. Everyone watched with interest what will happen next. In the headquarters of Berserk's apartment, it was fun. The girls had fun reading news about how Shrig was disgraced. There was also no reason for sadness in Gaon. Chol was glad to us that his brother returned unharmed. I also got a quest to restore the users. The guild members did not yet understand how much the quest for the restoration of the USRA was actually cool. This is the first kingdom that appeared after Arcana began to be updated in reality. As soon as the reconstruction ends, its value will fly to heaven. Now a whole bunch of people are trying to establish relations with the USRA like Shrig. Its value reaches astronomical heights. In addition, the kingdom of Asura is known for its natural wealth. He has great potential. The nearby regions will come in handy for raising levels since the monsters are revived in them. Later, you can even get the title. Crowds of those who wanted to ask Lee Ho-Yol to add them to the quest of the recovery of the user. Lee Ho-Yol did not have time to hide from them. I needed a vacation. Having wrapped it on the passage of Lee Ho-Yol with a click of fingers, opened the passage in the wall. He will not get home at this pace. Perhaps it is worth going to the office of the Tower of Magicians. Suddenly, a member of the guild, Shining Jessie Hines, hung up from nowhere. She was waiting for him. Having learned thanks to the video, the right Korean greeting, Jessie took off her hat and bowed her head in front of Lee Ho-Yol. Tiredly looking at her, whether Ho-Yol was pleasantly surprised by her politeness, but already kept with his last strength so as not to fall asleep right at the table. He is very tired. Jessie suggested sitting down. Jessie had many questions about his magic. She revised all the videos with Lee Hool and his manifestations of magic. How he was able to postpone the Castle Marcello from the first time struck her. Teacher Jessie even said that Ho-Yol is more than a genius. She asked him about magic to pour questions one after another. He did not have time to catch her thoughts. Suddenly, Jessie noticed that he fell asleep. She corrected his hair that got into the eye and left a note. It was said that she would go the next time. Waking up, Granfell discovered this note. Of course, it was somewhat impolite on his part to fall asleep in front of an outsider right at the table, but he was so exhausted that he no longer controlled this process. A new quest also appeared. The Supreme Magician of the Marcello Tower wanted to achieve new heights in the study of magic, along with Ho-Yole. It was necessary to prove ourselves and convince 20 Supreme Magicians of their competence. It was logical. Supreme Magicians would not have accepted a new researcher without testing. But why exactly today? So I wanted to sleep. Lee Ho-yol was almost without strength. They knocked on the door. It was Marcelo. He came personally to report the test. And Lee Ho-yol, putting on a jacket, asked Marcelo to take him to the Supreme Magicians right now. The first part of the quest was the challenge of Belea Jusia. It was necessary to visit the conference of the Supreme Magicians. Belea Jusia was already looking forward to his parish. The senior magician of the healing school, Belea Jusia, was waiting for him, but I was sure that Ho-yol could not prove his qualifications. He stood in front of the door, but it was impossible to open it just like that. Sealing magic of the 3rd level superimposed by 3 senior magicians. Belea was sure Lee Ho-yol could not. It's not that it will be difficult to open a room for whether it is difficult for Ho-yolya, but even find it for starters. But as always, everyone underestimated the strength and the experience of Ho-yolya. More precisely, Grandfell. For less than a minute, Lee Ho-yol not only found the door but also entered it. All the magicians sitting inside opened their mouths from shock that had fallen on them. With such ease, Lee Ho-yol destroyed the sealing magic of the 3rd level. Even Marcelo is the creator of the science of the theory of magic, and that could not have been like that. But whether Ho-yol himself was now not in the mood to whine. He was angry with magicians for this joke with the door. He made such a way because he thought that they wanted to meet him, and his time was spent on such trifles and jokes. Those who should take responsibility for what is happening. Lee Ho-yol leaned over Belea Jusia with an ominous smile, and he fell asleep again, now standing right above the magician. This is bad. You need to get home rather and sleep normally. A little more and this whole situation will turn into a mockery of oneself. Turning around and reporting that this time forgives everyone, Ho-yol went out the door. Beautifully surprised by the daring behavior was Belea Jusia herself. So such strong magic is just a small prank for him. A spell that could not be turned by half of those present Lee Ho-yol, called only a shallow prank. It was amazing. Mages recalled that this same researcher who took part in the previous conference, now it became clear why it was his Marcello recommended for participation. This is the same researcher who saw through the illusory magic of the owner of the Tower of Magicians. Surprisingly, after the incident, the number of magicians who recognized Lee Ho-yol increased only to 3 out of 20. This is less than he expected from this meeting. But they are all older magicians and the best in their directions. So this is a pretty good result for a simple door opening if you think about good. He is only a demon hunter and not a magician, so there is nowhere to rush. Now you can go to sleep, and then throw the glasses to the distribution of characteristics from the release of the Usra. It is necessary to start the study of magic with the basics. Suddenly a voice came and he emanated from a sheet of parchment. It was Marcelo. Magic parchment allowed magicians to communicate with himself. This is a magical object. To answer it was necessary to just talk with parchment. This manner of communication enraged Grandfell, and he threw the parchment into the trash. But he flew back, and Marcelo began to apologize for the joke of magicians. He did not know that they would do this. Of course, Marcelo had already heard about what happened in the Crystal Hall. He himself did not expect such rudeness from the Supreme Magicians. The Supreme Magician is the one who has reached the peak of magic regardless of the school. Senior magicians demand from the Supreme Magicians to constantly prove that they are worthy of their position. This is like how sculptors at school fight for their superiority. This is probably very tiring for Marcelo. This is not a new and not amazing case. Lee Ho-yolya was tested because Marcelo could not prove that it was good enough. He was very sorry. Lee Ho-yol said that Marcelo should not apologize. The nobles also constantly show and prove that they are worthy of their high rank. Grandfell was accustomed to various tests. However, Marcelo was insulting something Ho-yolya underestimated, and he uttered this word in vain. If you say to Grandfell the word to underestimate, he must prove himself so as to justify these expectations. He will continue to improve himself to the last. In addition, Marcelo suddenly realized that it was extremely wrong to discuss such a topic through the parchment, and said that he would come now. Lee Ho-yol tried to prove that this is not worth it, and everything was fine, but he was already on the way to the office. But Lee Ho-yol so much wanted to sleep. He will never sleep at such a pace. It will be extremely difficult to earn the respect of senior magicians as a novice magician. Reflecting, Ho-yol created the magic of light on the go, creating bizarre light effects without noticing it. Grandfell had only 206 6th level. All senior magicians are at least 600th. For them, he is just a noob. But even this will not force Ho-yolya to surrender. He will show them all of respect, and it will turn an exaggeration into reality, intervention, and manifestation. Magic was beautiful. Magic traces of Lee Ho-yolya were perfect. The pride of Grandfell was therefore pride in Ho-yolya. Although this was perfectly only from Lee Ho-yolya, all mana ended. But this magic is considered the most basic of all. Marcelo knocked on the door and entered. The ability to keep his face was one of the abilities of Grandfell. No matter how bad he was, he looked ready for conversation. The reconstruction of the US Ray was in full swing. We were read the forums with us Chal, on which there were spores about who defeated the sin of the Order of the Lionheart, or Lee Ho-yol. Many considered the second only a poser and a fraudster. This was very angry with us, those minds. He saw everything that happened with his own eyes. How can one talk about it? Marcelo's expression surprised Grandfell. He did not understand that he was in a wild admiration for his magical traces. And this is just from basic light magic. It turns out the most ordinary magic left such impressive traces. Usually the more complicated the process is, the more beautiful and more magical traces. Everything was different here. Following Marcello, Claire burst into the office. She was no less admiration than Marcello. Claire thought initially that these were the traces of Marcello himself, and so that they turn out to be at least a dragon here. Since the door to the office was opened at it, began to look at other magicians, and were in the same delight. They could not believe that these were traces of a novice Ho-Yolia. The crowd gathered considerable. Mages even believed that with such traces it could be won in the annual competition of magical traces. Mages filled Marcello with questions about the nature of these traces, but the senior magician Marcello assured his comrades that Li Ho-Yol left traces. Turning around, he saw that and the trace was caught. Where could he go? And the loss rushed away from all legs away from this crowd. He did not have the strength and desire to communicate with everyone now. You need to run home and urgently rest. But on the way from the tower, Ho-Yol stumbled upon another group of magicians. They were unhappy with his self-confidence and decided to check him out again and make fun. And then whether they were offered to solve the task. It was a puzzle that is called one of the 3 complex tasks of the Tower of Magicians. The current decision record was 9 days, 3 hours, 21 minutes, and 7 seconds. This puzzle becomes the more difficult, the more mana is invested there. Even Marcello spent more than 10 days on her decision. Using the magic of appeals, Li Ho-Yol decided a riddle. And whether Ho-Yol decided to create a new record in 1 second. Leaving magicians in tears and hysteria, Li Ho-Yol ran on. Already 7 out of 20 senior magicians, Li Ho-Yol managed to convince of his own viability. Leaving the tower, Li Ho-Yol saw a crowd of journalists, of operators, and ordinary people who wanted to see him. They attacked him with questions about sin and about whether he is really a fraudster. Li Ho-Yol did not understand these rumors around his person, and did not know what they were talking about so now. Of course, he was not going to answer people without manners and informed the crowd, and behind him was already catching up with magicians from his office who had questions about his magical trace. Li Ho-Yol grabbed his head. He was surrounded. They caught like fish on the network. It was urgent to get out of here in any way. At the near wall, Granfell saw a pink glow and realized that there was something. The course of mana has changed. He rushed towards the wall and walked through it. It turned out to be the office of Belea Juicia. It was a surprise for her. Li Ho-Yol saw the passage immediately as she opened it and immediately went into it. Granfell recognized her from the Crystal Hall. It turns out Belea now literally saved him. He felt the intervention in the wall. Similar happened to the illusion of the owner of the Tower of Magicians. He felt that in Manu in the wall, someone intervened, and he carried out a study in order to return it to its original state. Belea was pleasantly stunned. Such a strong magician. And just a beginner. She laughed. It annoyed Granfell. He thought that Belea was laughing at him. And then she saw this repeated his phrase that if you are underestimated, then you need to turn these expectations into reality. How could she know this incomprehensible? Most likely, Ho-Yol was the only one who believed that the illusory magic of the owner of the tower was simple. And only now Belea decided to introduce it. Like the supreme mage of Marcello, she decided to recognize his qualifications. So now there were already 8 senior magicians out of 20 who recognized the qualifications of whether the H-O-E-L-E. Being already at home and leafing through the internet, Ho-Yol realized what gossip everyone talked about. It looks like Berserk also talk about what is happening, but they protect Ho-Yolia like Gaon. Why is Ho-Yol of Porus he himself did not understand? Naturally, Granfell took up training in cooking and cleaning. In addition, Granfell decided to go through a mandatory daily quest to maintain a form. The balance between the work and the life of Granfell did not mean anything. As a result of the constant execution of the class quest, Granfell is now 33 endurance points and 35 bonuses of dexterity. This is a lot. Class quests are simply the best. True, for a demon hunter, the characteristics of endurance and dexterity are completely useless in essence. It would be better to give just Manu. It would be nice to come up with something for close combat. Just as Granfell developed magical skills despite the fact that he is a demon hunter, like the sword of the aura that Harkon used then, it was somewhat different from Mana. It was something the same. And then Granfell reproduced his hand from memory and from the knife with which he cut. The carrots burst the sword of aura. This sword came out so powerful that it struck the wall of the house by shocking passers. Repair work was carried out on the Yuzra archipelago. Guild Berserk also took part in recovery. The head of the guild was stuck in his phone and looked very annoyed as always. She watched the same news as all. The theories about whether the sin really defeated Ho-Yol or the Order of the Lionheart was taken out. There were a great many theories, and in each they spoke different nonsense. The next moment, the phone flew on the ground on a scale. Leonie was in wild rage. The comrades tried to reassure Leonie, but she could not stop being angry with these idiots that they shot these videos. Everyone noticed that Leonie, oh, how not to respond to Li Ho-Yol. They even thought that Leonie is not indifferent to Li Ho, but she proved that it was all because she was grateful for his help and for the quest to restore the users. but at the same time blushed. In any case, these were only stupid gossip that will calm down sooner or later. The girl thought about how she would receive her title by making a considerable contribution to the restoration of the kingdom. Already the level of kinship and influence of Berserk in the Yuzura was considerable. Soon, all guilds will be treated with proper respect. The quest really became a great opportunity for the Berserker Guild. Treasure islands on which it is possible to obtain Arcana's resources without entering the faults. Even just the rights to develop one mine would be extremely valuable. And therefore, Leone did not understand why it was Ho Hiro who gave this excellent opportunity. Now they owe him even more. Leone was interested when Lee Ho Yol would invite her to a cup of tea, and whether Ho Yol was already in the Yuzura. After the incident with the Sword of the Aura, he had been dealing with the mistress of the house and repair for a long time. The lack of control is not very good even if the Sword of Aura was cool. Harkon needs to teach him. You need to ask him. Before entering Yuzura, he was stopped by the guards and demanded a pass. You can enter during the restoration of the island only by passing. Since neither a pass nor a personality certificate, Lee Ho Yolya had a guard asked him to leave. Lee Ho Yol said that he came to Harkon, to which the guard again refused him that he was starting to enrage. The guard began to scream at Lee Ho Yolya, believing that he decided to get into the island for another onlook. But then someone came out to meet them. It was King Hakun. He cordially welcomed Ho Yolya. It turned out to be a characteristic of authority, only worked when revealing its name. Granfell now understood who in front of them and why the king behaves like that. So Hoyol informed the king that dealt with Harkon, and that he does not have permission, otherwise they do not miss him. The king was taken aback. He was surprised that someone could not recognize Ho Yolya to demand a pass from him. Indeed, in the Yuzure, he is at the same level of authority with the king himself. Orlin had a lion's heart under the leadership of Ezeki Bright. When Lee Ho Yol asked Harkon to help him master the Sword of Aura was surprised, and he was surprised even more when he found out that Ho Yol had already managed to see the light of the sword and reproduce the sword on his own first attempt. After all, this is not what you can just feel if you have no talent, even training for decades in a row. Of course, Harkon really wanted to help Granfell, but could not. The Sword of Aura is not the thing that can be studied just by wanting. In addition, whether Ho Yol magician, and in order to show the sword, you need to train at least 10 years. Then Lee Ho Yol said that he had already managed to show him. Lee Hyol had to now learn only to manage it. The surprised Harkon called Ezek to him and ordered her to get his sword and take the Oath of Leo. The Oath of Leo was a huge stone with a lion's cut face on it. Leo had scars. Fiery stone slab. This is the relic transmitted from generation to generation in the Order of the Lion Heart. It is made of a special type of monument called steel, which is not in this world. The plate is indestructible and personifies the indestructibility of the Oath of the Order. One of the scars on the face of Leo was left by the very first commander of the Knights, and the second Harkon himself. Having passed on Ho, Harkon invited him to try to personally leave his scar on the stone. The Sword of the Aura is natural. The stunned Knights of the Order tried to stop their commander. Lee Ho Yol is not a member of the Order. But Ezeka Bright reassured everyone. She was sure that Ho Yol in any case could not do this. The commander of Lee Ho Yol refused to take and took the usual training sword of the Order of the Lion Heart, in which even the blade was blurred. Approaching the stove and swinging Lee Ho Yol created the Aura Sword, and left the third scar on the stone without much effort. Such a huge Aura Sword turned out that all the knights just gasped. True, whether the forces of Hoyol fell almost to zero after the creation of this magic, and there was no mana. The manifestation of such a huge sword of the aura is almost the first time. It was an amazing sight. Harkon was delighted with how the potential of Lee Ho Yolya was opened. Training will begin right now, and Harkon told Inoku and Essek that Lee Ho Yol will go under their leadership with the rest of the recruits. When studying the art of the sword, you need to start with the basics. Esseka and Enoch perfectly owned a sword of auras. Then they need to study. Yenok was not very pleased with such a student but could not do anything. But in any case, whether Ho Yol refused to pick up the commander's sword means he treats him with respect. So Inoku will have to respect the Hool even though it was mentally difficult for him. The main instructor will be Esseka Bright. She ordered everyone to change into a training form and then return to start training. In a training suit, Lee Ho Yol looked great. Training of a class quest benefited him. Even Esseka looked at his muscles that Yenok noticed. Training began with the basics of how to keep the sword, how to move correctly, where to turn, and so on. Having produced these maneuvers, Lee Ho Yol tried to remember how Harkon did it, and at some point a pillar of light again burst from his sword. Granfell hit the ground with a sword. The sound of the sound wave was so strong that Ezeka almost demolished. They were with the troops, to put it mildly, in shock. To the dumb question of all those around him, whether Ho Yol answered that he simply imitated the movements of Harkon that he had seen before. He simply took possession of the technique of the commander's sword. It was almost impossible, the last stage to which the knights have been striving for decades. It was brilliant, but Ho Yol saw only a couple of times as the Sword of Aura appears. Harkon also watched him from afar and was amazed at least the others. It was a talent given to God. It will be a pity if Lee Ho Yol burns him just as a magician. Harkon wanted to recruit him in knights. Hakun approached Harkon. The king was a little annoying and meant so that Harkon escaped from him to training. Having changed into a training form, Harkon joined his own and asked Enoch and Izuka treats him as well as the rest of whom they train. Not only Enoch, but the rest were shocked. Harkon decided to take part with Hoyole, and he was not afraid that he would be accused of treason. Moreover, whether Hoyole suggested Esika and Anika to take part with them, then incredibly angry the Enoch. Thus, the most awkward training began with the commander of the knights in history. In the Tower of Magicians in his laboratory, Mage Mattis sat when he knocked on the door. Black magic researcher, Senior Mage Mattis, Dean Carl, a man who raised black magic who was considered non-standard until the present time. If it weren't for Marcello, Mattis would be the supreme magician of the tower. The magician entered, which was asked to find objects for Li Hoyolia. One of them seemed to be connected with black magic, and it had to be appreciated. These were not simple objects, pure emerald silk scales, koi, and the sphere of the vampire. Anyway, Mattis considered Hoyolia a swindler. Why does he need these items also so different in properties? Then Mattis ordered to bring a magical parchment, and he himself would write a hoe about the property of these items. On the Yuzra archipelago, training ended. Recruits were wildly exhausted, and when everyone already went to bed, only one person continued to train. Of course, the bed was Granfell empty. After all, in addition to this training, he needed to finish the daily repeating quest. Li Hoyole had already dreamed of rest, but Granfell was inexorable. Fatigue took off like a hand when Li Hoyole saw an increase in characteristics for completing a training that surpassed his possibilities. But now it really was time to sleep. Suddenly, did Hoyole notice an owl that carried him a letter in his claws? Magic parchment again. It was from Dean Carl Mattis, the older magician of the tower. He wanted to evaluate the subjects that Hoyole requested. So the first is the vampire area, filled by the blood of the vampire. Damage when exploding. This is a magic tool used by demons. It is extremely rare. Mattis asked to rent it for research and received consent. Since the minimum level of use of this sphere was the 400th Granfell allowed to do this, then he will be able to use this deal for his purposes when he wants to return the hexagonal brooch. Further, pure emerald. It has a pure crystalline structure. It can give the following effect when hits. It restores endurance. It can be used in the production of jewelry. The next treasure of the island of silk scales of Koi. When using the subject, such effects as an increase in kinship with the attribute of fire will be transmitted. An increase in the chances of evasion opens the characteristic of the aesthetics. In a similar way, it can be used in the production of objects. The scales of Mattis also wanted to rent, but then Granfell was already refused. From the emerald and Chek Li Hayol asked to make a jewelry and a scarf. It was possible, but Mattis warned that a fairly high price tag would be put up for the work of these items. Li Hoyole hoped to bargain, but Granfell, as always, said that he was only interested in quality, and that the price does not matter. The main thing is the best result of the work. First, he wants to evaluate the quality of work, then he will actually make payment. Without finishing the conversation, whether Hoyole fell out on his bed, leaving Mattis's parchment in confusion. Then he left a note with a request for a personal meeting. At dawn, while still sleeping, Granfell was already in the process of fulfilling his daily repeating quest. Litigant Hoyole even began to get used to this quest. In the process of rest, Li Hoyole received another message from Mattis. As it turned out in the morning, he did not notice the note. Then Mattis personally asked him to meet tomorrow. It was difficult for Li Hoyole the day after tomorrow. 3 days later, he could not either. Mattis realized that this was a test. Whether Hoyole wants to understand whether Mattis has restraint and etiquette. Mattis asked Hoyolia to choose the date of the meeting. It was agreed to meet in the morning 2 days later in the hanging gardens of the Tower of Magicians. Li Hoyole was already going to visit the tower on this day, but Mattis did not have to know about it. Then there was a morning training of the order. Li Hoyole wanted to take part in it, but Harkon stopped him. As it turned out, there's nothing to teach Hakon to teach Hoyolia. Now he is at the stage when it is necessary to achieve enlightenment in real battles. Li Hoyole clearly, according to Harkon, underestimated his abilities. In addition, Harkon asked Hoyolia to show his sword aura. He agreed, at least understood, that if he could not control them correctly, then again he would instantly remain without strength. The aura sword is different from the skills. Like the magic that Hoyole before that did this ability which can be mastered regardless of the class. He felt it. The course through his body is something different from mana. So if you apply this stream, it will be like the use of magic, and Granfell did it. A wild pillar of light burst from the sword that struck everyone. After the use of research and intervention, the sword of the sword was stabilized. It was like magic. According to Karkon, the stable sword of the aura comes from a disciplined and diligent attitude, and Hoyole constantly trained not only with the order, but also in itself. But that Granfell's sword would not even have Harkon. He considered Hoyolia a born master of the sword and invited him to go this path to the end. But Li Hoyole did not plan to devote himself exclusively to the sword. But if on the way that he goes to meet the sword, this path will become the way of Granfell. They said goodbye, and Li Hoyole went on. Esika had never heard about a man who was able to take possession of the aura with a sword in 1 day. It turns out that Hoyole is truly a genius. unlike people of a normal rank. And even if he is too far away and let it seem that no matter how much Esika runs, and that she would not catch up with him, a proud master of dream, and one day she will become shoulder to the shoulder with Harkon and Lee Ho-Yole. Recruits torn from enthusiasm after the success of Lee Ho-Ale with the Ore Sword, genius slopes to change others for the better. Meanwhile, Granfell was looking for low-level monsters in the forest on which you can practice, as Harkon said in a real battle. Type of deer demon of the 10th level. And then a frozen 300-level leopard came out to meet him. Since the Granfell was not a demon, skill of the natural enemy did not activate. With a difference of 74 levels, it will be difficult to win. But since this beast dared to go out, that Granfell decided to teach him a lesson and activated his Sword of Aura. The Pride of the Aristocrat was also activated. The captain of the Order of the Shadow Mercenaries, Kichi, was looking for their comrades. She did not understand where so many monsters came from. In the short lumen of the trees, Kichi noticed a man and nearby a stiff, groomed leopard. The owner of the Sword of Aura is strong, but his opponent is not weak. Kichi was lucky that she was not the first to meet him and could run away now. The Order had to slow down to avoid meeting with the leopard, but now they can calmly and safely get to the kingdom of Yuzra. It was bad. The difference in levels is large and the skill is not activated as it was in the case of Sin. If you make any rash movement, you can be a counterattack instantly. But you can't wait for the Sword of the Aura to take too much effort. You can repeat the trick as with an Emerald Tiger. Immobilize and then attack. When the leopard attacked, Granfell slowed down and destroyed him. Even Granfell himself was not that Ho-Yole was surprised that only one blow was enough for such a strong enemy. The power of the sword was striking. True, there is very little strength left again. The day of meeting with Mattis in Hanging Gardens came. Mattis hoped to understand for this meeting. Lee Ho-Yole was. When Lee Ho-Yole approached Mattis, it was the feeling that even the earth was shook. A really extraordinary person. After the battle with the leopard, Lee Ho-Yole had little strength to sir. He hastily asked Mattis to do with him, but as soon as Lee Ho-Yole came even closer, rings on Mattis's hand became black. The rings determined the sensitivity to black magic. Mattis has never seen such a deep darkness. How deep it is. Granfell did not understand why they are so staring at him. He sat down at the table. In childhood and youth, peers mucked over maths due to his hobbies with dark magic. No one believed in the success of his research and mocked him as soon as they could. But Mattis, as a true scientist, could not deny any science. I all the more in advance without knowing anything about them. Since childhood, Mattis was determined to show people the true value of black magic, and having already matured his ideas. Not everyone supported his ideas, but not everyone has already denied. Black magic, according to Mattis, could solve problems that was not able to solve current magic. It may even be possible to solve the problem of interference in the universe, which called arcana into reality. After that, the rest of the magicians also began to accept black magic. But this glory did not last long. Years passed and Mattis could not advance in their research. After a few years, the magician of magicians appeared on Earth as a result of interference in the universe. The ability to prevent the intervention was determined, but he was not capable of this alone, and Mattis could not even imagine that someone with such a strong sensitivity to black magic could exist outside the arcana. Together with Lee Hool, Mattis now planned to overcome the limits of the study of black magic. Lee Ho-Yole himself asked about the rings and whether they are related to the topic of their conversation. Granfell had only an hour for a conversation, so it was time to move on to the essence of the issue. And then Mattis explained that the rings would determine the sensitivity to black magic, or in other words, the talent for this magic. However, such a dark and deep light was the first time. Granfell knew little about dark magic, but he was familiar with this word. Mattis explained that this is a different type of magic that uses mana different from the usual. If magic explores and intervenes in mana targets to manifest the spell, then black magic uses inner darkness as a source, and it is a slightly different force. This black mana is created in the heart of the caster and especially depends on its past. The deeper and darker the past of the caster, the more powerful his black mana. And Mattis was wondering what the past has Ho-Yole with such talent. This topic interested Granfell. Lee Ho-Yole understood what kind of past. Not about his, but his character. About the dark past of Granfell, in any case it is quite unpleasant when they try to climb into your soul and find out the past. In the etiquette, it was not very decent to ask about this, especially at the first acquaintance. Granfell to this and indicated Mattis. He sincerely apologized for his impolite. Mattis was really embarrassing and he even wanted to report on his behavior above, but it was unfounded. Of course, Ho-Yole accepted Mattis. After all, the inquisitive mind is the virtue of the scientist. The scientist so devoted to his duty cannot but like it. However, since black magic uses the type of mana different from the main one, this should mean that even in a state of exhausted mana, it is possible to use it. This was very interested in Granfell. The fact that Ho-Yole became interested in black magic very pleased Mattis, and he suggested that he take the path of studying it together. The number of magicians who recognized Ho-Yole grew by one more, Mattis. The time ended and Lee Ho-Yole informed Mattis that he would contact him later. He did not want to stay because Mattis would want to draw him into the graduate school of the Tower of Magicians, and he did not need this. and whether Ho-Yol is already in his office in the Tower of Magicians. And he immediately took up the study of the foundations of magic as planned. There was an indecent number of messages in the magic parchment. Someone wanted to meet someone to meet. Marcelo Balea is some kind of Maya. And then a notification came. All 20 senior magicians followed Mathis's example and recognized Lee Ho-Yolya. Apparently, Mathis has considerable authority in the tower. Kinship with Basha magicians increased. The influence has also grown rapidly. The new function in the Tower of Magicians was activated. True, it is not yet clear which one. Now in the hands of Lee Ho-Yolya and the Kingdom of Yuzra and the Tower of Magicians. There was nothing new in the news yet. Arcana's nation first appeared in reality. The quantity of capital is invested in the Kingdom of Yuzra. Guilds Gaon and Berserk are actively invested in the kingdom. Most experts believe this was an excellent solution and contribution to the future. Guild Gaon has already risen from 5th in the ratings to the 3rd. Chal and we did not know how to thank you, Ho-Yolya, for helping them so much. This is all thanks to him. If not Ho-Yol, even Chal would not be here now if he had not saved him from the demon. It is necessary to properly work on the quest of the restoration of the user so as not to bring Ho-Yol. In the Gaon chats, they condemned that they did not cooperate with the Guild of Mythology, which enraged us Taimina. Members of the National Assembly surprisingly supported the Guild of Mythology. Merciful fights in the first place is in business. But are the members of the National Assembly so the paddles? Meanwhile, the Hildmaster of the mythology of Baek Yi-Sol, having ruined the same member of the National Assembly with his poison now called the Analyst, she asked to cancel all plans for tomorrow. She will go to the Zavra to the Kingdom of Yuzra to meet someone, and only she knew that this one himself is Ho-Yol. The sisters of Lee Ho-Yolya did not give him rest overwhelming with calls and SMS. With congratulations and their admiration. And again another parchment came from the Tower of Magicians. It was the senior magician Maya, one of those who wanted to meet him. The parchment of that is Maya apologized for the importunity. She was about to say something to Ho-Yol, how she was interrupted by another parchment. It was a certain Tom Van Green, who also really wanted to meet Lee Hyole. And then the cabinet flooded these parchments, shouting each other in vain. Lee Ho-Yolya was dizzy. It's time to make your legs again. Lee Ho-Yol ran and parchments flew after him. I barely managed to escape to Yuzra. King Haakon was excessively wants to see Ho-Yolya and was ready to provide him with the long-awaited silence and peace. But it was all this fuss that the partner in the scientific work of the Supreme Magician meant the formation of a partner. But Lee Ho-Yol noticed that he does not take bribes all the more if they are disguised as sincerity. Hakuna even more understood why the sin of greed fell in front of heel so quickly. And after that, the king said that he understands why Guild Gaon posted a video on YouTube about Lee Ho-Yole. Hu-Yol himself did not know about any video. The sisters continued to call Ho-Yolya. He even thought that something happened, and he answered the video call. Lee Ho-Yolya immediately began with a performance in which she copied the behavior and speech of Ho-Yolya before the sin that she saw in the video of Gaon. It turns out on YouTube there were already more than 100 million views of this video, and many already knew it by heart. Lee Ho-Yol dropped the call, as he realized that nothing important happened. After that, whether Ho-Yol Hakuna give him a place to relax. The king was offered to him by the duchy or even independent land ownership, but it was not necessary. A quiet enough place and warm bed. The king settled Lee Ho-Yolya in a dear separate bungalow, a great place to relax from everyone. Sitting on the sofa, Lee Ho-Yol opened YouTube or to find that very video. He was very embarrassed, and Gaon dared to download a video with him. For this, you can dry Gaon. And when Lee Ho-Yol planned to lie down, Granfell realized that there was dust in the house. And oddly enough, the general cleaning began again. Gaon participants were now also on the Yuzra in their tent. Tai Ming was shocked for us from how their shares fell. Again, the guild of the guild is mythology that dissolved some rumors. Perhaps this they wanted to say that Gaon should divide the quest to restore the users with them until they drowned Gaon even more. And then near their tent, there was none other than the Hildmaster of the mythology of Baek Yi-Sol. The guard tried not to miss the lady, but somehow in a minute she was already inside. When Taemin saw her, he did not understand how the guild members missed her. Looking out, he saw his guard unconscious. The attack on the guild is already serious. Listening to Baek Yi-Sol to us, Chal felt a feeling of deja vu. He could not move literally when Baek Yi-Sol watched. Child Corporation mythology. It was she who pulled the guild to the place where they had already heard about them. In rage, Taemin tried to explain to Baek Yi-Sol that she crossed all the borders now. Chol was interested in how she secured the support of the National Council, and still Chol has not controlled himself. It was the magic of dominance over the mind, as then with a demon, but she should not act on players. Smiling, smoking back looked right into our eyes and he still could not move. And near their tent is at a table of Ho-Yol over the guards thinking, what happened here? Inside, Granfell felt a strange stuffiness and immediately attacked Taemina with a cry, driving him for that video. And the head of mythology, Baek Yi-Sol, was pleasantly surprised. She didn't even have to look for Ho-Yolya. He came himself. Stepping closer, Baek Yi-Sol named her name and tried to flirt with Lee Ho-Yol, but it was to no avail that she was unpleasantly struck. Inappropriately paying any attention to Baek Yi-Sol Lee Ho, he continued to blame Gon of posting that video. But Chal was convinced of Lee Ho-yolya that this video was posted only to refute the absurd rumors about Lee Hoyle and show his strength and courage. They only tried to thank him so much. However, Baek Yi-sol repeated an attempt to speak with Lee Hool. She offended that he rather rudely treated her and did not pay attention to her. In his manner, Granfell answered Baek Yi-sol that she behaved impolitely. She interrupted his conversation with Gaon. He probably forgot whether it was Ho-yol initially burst into the tent and interrupted the conversation of Tae-mina and Bak Yi-sol. But for the succubus, people were just prey. Therefore, Bak Yi-sol was not offended by Lee Ho-yolya. She was sure that even he could not resist her spell. The skill of the natural enemy was activated. Then Granfell finally realized that there was a demon nearby. True, it is not yet clear who exactly. Suddenly, a fiery crowd of internet bloggers burst into the tent. Baek Yi-sol was confused, and only Chal knew from where they came from. It was his hand. Let Baek Yi-sol know that not only she can manipulate the media. It was all not worried about Ho-yolya. He tried to understand in whom the demon sits. Perhaps this is Tae-min, or still Baek Yi-sol, which just approached him. And she offered to communicate together in another environment. But Lee Ho-yol categorically refused to her eyes at the whole crowd on the cell. It was a shock for the proud back of Yi-sol. Yes, and for the rest too. Nobody has ever refused her. Moreover, whether Ho-yol indicated that he does not have time for those who are not able to plan a meeting in advance. And Baek Yi-sol suggested after she works out his manners. Number 1 in the world of South Korea, Baek Yi-sol, child and guildmaster of mythology. She has 60 million subscribers on Instagram. She is the most popular celebrity of this era. All that she drinks is holding or inflicting on herself becomes a trend and is sold in minutes. Baek. The reason why the slogan of mythology has become merciful is not available, and now it is practically and is mythology. Everyone loves her, everyone wants her attention, everyone wants her. So why her seduction did not work on Lee Ho-yolya? This demon will not forgive, it needs to be destroyed. Back consciousness struck outwardly, but she did not want to take revenge on anyone. The demon was evil at her because she herself asked for help, and now she was still unhappy with something. After all, before Baek Yi-sol said that she wishes to revenge on everyone who looked at her abroad, hated her. She said that she would do everything for this, and the demon helped her achieve everything desired. But Baek did not want to. There should not be a Hool but a demon. Suka began to manipulate her with feelings to reproach that even her father considers her a mistake. And that without her, Baek Yi-sol is no one. Baek grabbed a piece of a broken mirror and brought to her throat, causing harm to herself. She resisted the demon. She was furious. Baek Yi-sol herself was already the same as she would become. The main thing is to destroy the demon inside yourself. The demon was already losing power and she was already scared. But Baek Salt was not scary, and she stuck this piece of glass into her stomach. She remembered Lee Ho-yolya. There in the tent, he saw Baek Yi-sol. Not a demon inside, but a backing. The demon died. It was urgent to find a way to heal. To do this, you need to absorb anything. Opening the door to the corridor, Baek called a guard who saw blood and offered to take her to the hospital. But the demon needed not this from the guard. She managed to save both herself and Baek Yi-sol. At the Yuzura archipelago, Granfell was tormented by the question of why his natural skill was activated. So the demon is nearby. It is sneaked in such a late hour without any resolution. All the same shameless as before. Not quite the guest whose Granfell expected. Looking at the door, he invited the demon to enter. But the demon did not enter the door. After a second, she sat on the window. Granfell showed her that it was not too polite to go through the window. Looking at the demon, Granfell realized that Baek Yi-sol Sol Sil Silut did not see as before. Something happened. She was sealed. He directly asked the demon about this. Suka began to mock Baek Yi-sol, and she said that she was no longer alive, and she told what happened precisely because of Lee Ho-yolya. After all, she sacrificed herself for him. Entering the courage of the succubus, she did not stop painting the torment of the Baek Yi-sol and covering it with mud and crushing the conscience of Lee Hool. Baek Yi-sol was the illegitimate daughter of the director of the corporation Mythology. The first article came out when the girl was only 8 years old. She did not have to do anything for the media to pay attention to her. They mocked her at school in the area. In the end, her mother took herself in a fit of depression, and her father said that although she could not allow the child to leave the child without parents, and accepted her. Then a couple of years passed, Baek Yi-sol awakened the hunter's abilities, and the father made her plowing her like a horse in faults. She did everything that her father wanted, because I wanted to be loved by them. Director of BX Chu Song was finally proud of his daughter. She wanted to convince all those people who underestimated and hated her, avenge everyone who poked his fingers into her mother, but in the end, she turned out to be an empty place according to the demon. I wanted to repay Lee Ho-yol. Granfell looked intently at the demoness. The demon's metal force was too weak to resist. She began to feel horror with which she could not cope. Anomalous horror. But the demon continued to fight. Lee Ho-yol realized that exorcism was activated, but there was no offering. How it happened? Lee Ho-yol was in a strange place. This child is Granfell. Apparently these are the habits of Granfell's mind. Lee Ho-yolya pierced a sudden pain in the heart, like someone squeezed him. And here Granfell is already older. It stands on the stairs of the second floor and looks down on all their loved ones whom demons destroyed. These are the memories of Granfell, so he felt in the past. Due to synchronization, Lee Ho-yol also felt it. All that rage that made Granfell take an oath to end all the demons that will meet in his way. Granfell stood above the succubus and conducted a rite of exorcism. When it ended, Granfell called back Yi's soul. He saw her pride. The girl survived happiness. Apparently back was very difficult. I had to go home and sleep. But Granfell was not too scrupulous in matters of feelings and offered to go home and sob there. But the exhausted back Yi soul fell to his feet without feelings. It is logical that she turned off after what she experienced. Granfell put her on the bed and wanted to cover her as knights burst into the room. They went to the patrol because they felt the presence of the demon and came to check whether everything was fine. Eseki's mouth opened in surprise when she saw a girl in bed. She apologized for the invasion. Of course, Ho-yol tried to say that this is not what they think. Yenuk jumped out of the room with tears in his eyes. Asika ran behind the man to reassure and whether Ho-yol was left in the room alone. Whether it seems to be easier to fight with a sin than to survive this terribly long and hard day, there is also a class quest appeared. He had an unkind foreboding when he saw a notification. Arcana's office workers in South Korea just observed how a new update of the game appeared. The new region of the northern city of Mertzlot opened. Mertzlota is the largest metropolis Arcana. There are shops and forges. People in the comments believed that this update would finally exhale. People around the world in chat broadcasts and so on were madly rejoicing in that renewal. All news was only about this event, but people knew not everyone. The King of Demons appeared. This was said in the class quest Granfell. It was necessary to explore the northern city of Permafrost and prevent the King of Demons to win. While Granfell calmly drank tea, Lee Ho-yol in a panic. The King of Demons is in the middle of the city. He believed that everyone needed to tell everyone about this to leave a comment, as the Kings of Demons taught in Akan these true sworn enemies of demon hunters. The Kings of Demons are very powerful, and there are also a lot of them, and the Kings of Demons have a system of ranks. Few demons hunters survived a clash even with the lowest King of Demons. The hunters taught the names and descriptions of those Kings of the Demons that were known. And of course, Granfell got everything possible about the Kings of Demons, although it was not necessarily. Well, Lee Ho-yol posted a comment on the network that the King of Demons appeared, but no one particularly paid attention to it. But even this did not upset if Ho-yolya. He believed that since Perslota, a huge metropolis could not happen. In any case, this update should be cool. First, you need to look at the items that were ordered in the Tower of Magicians, although the price there will be very high. The bird flew with the delivery of magicians from the tower. The bird was a bad character, but it did not matter. His order arrived just in time. Now, whether Ho-yol will not have to go to the Tower of Magicians. There are too many annoying faces. Let's see how the magicians coped with the task. South A ring from a pure emerald. When hits, it restores endurance. Awesome item. With any attack, the forces will be restored. At this time, whether Ho-yol checked his account. Somewhere he read that similar items were estimated at billions. This is also an individual order. A handkerchief from Koi Scales. Increases kinship with the attributes of fire, increases the chances of evasion, and opens the characteristic of aesthetics. What kind of characteristic this was not entirely clear. This item was no less masterpiece than a ring with an emerald. The value of such objects was immeasurable. Some items were estimated even in billions or trillions won. Lee Ho-yol was very afraid to open a letter with the price for individual manufacture. But Granfell was only important. Marcelo also sent a vest as a gift. Granfell also liked him very much as he harmonized with a handkerchief from Koi Scales. The class quest has renewed again. The quest about the King of Demons was suspended. Allegedly, it was necessary to fulfill some previous quest about which Granfell did not even know. The head of the guild Inazum from Japan was indignant that they began to lose to Gaon. Hisagi Kazuma believed that they betray themselves with this. And he was sure that he would take care to fix everything thanks to quests in Permafrost. Its leader will not give him a second chance of failure. Mertzlota appeared at sea near Hokkaido. This information was still secret, and none of the guilds, except for Inazuma, is unknown. The Japanese authorities gave their guild an advantage. The guild analysts believed that it was not very reasonable not to let other players go to Permafrost, but to do it themselves and not to explore the place in advance. Hisagi Kazuma pierced the wall with his fist next to the analyst with anger. After all, Taemin has a born barbarian, and Perslota is the city of barbarians. Inazum needs this advantage in time to restore its status in the guild rating. What happened in the Yuzra? This shame should not happen again. All members of the Inazum Guild were ordered to immediately go to Hokkaido, and the analyst has already sent a message to his person with the location of Permafrost for which he was paid. He paid him a news channel. The media also fought for who will be the first to lay out the plot from the scene, and this information was already on the internet. The Guildmaster shining with Roxa. The analyst also announced the whereabouts of the Permafrost, and the guild advanced there. The same situation was in the Guild of Berserk. Mertzlota is a city in which you can get a barber class. He was one of the main bases at the time when Arcana was a game. There were blacksmiths, ordinary residents, and various shops, ordinary for a metropolis. People have not just been delighted and called this event a maturation for humanity. If the filling of the city is the same as in the game, then the city will greatly help players. However, in Hokkaido, everything was cordoned off. Near the fault, there was an armed guard and everything was blocked by no one missed. To get away from us, Taemina demanded a passport and he was just in wild rage. This is for his memory for the first time. Brother Taemina Chal also tried to talk with a cordon, but they were impenetrable. No one was allowed at all. Meanwhile, Inazuma inside the portal was already in a hurry to permafrost. They understood that other guilds would not be restrained forever, and they need to be first in any case, at least 10 minutes to get ahead of the rest. The players saw the gates of permafrost in front and froze in wild amazement. The gates of the city were dotted with the bodies of the inhabitants, and the gate from the city too. Everything was in the blood. The players did not understand what it was. It was creepy, and suddenly they realized what happened here and who did it all. One of the guild members pierced the night. It was a demon. The demon was incredibly huge and ferocious, with burning red eyes and long claws. In the residence of Ho Yolya on the Yuzra Back archipelago, she still slept a few hours earlier. When Back woke up, she did not understand where she was and how it happened that she was alive at all. Back did not remember everything. How she lost consciousness, how she sobbed in front of Li Ho. Yol from this girl remembered only excerpts. She owed his life now and did not know how to pay for all the inconvenience caused. Ho Yol, that is. And Granfell looked at the quest assignment. There was a scale. If it is empty, then he will fail the task. The scale meant the number of surviving inhabitants permafrost, but while the scale was not visible, it was time to go to permafrost, but first it was necessary to wake Back. Turning to the bed, Li Ho Yol saw that Back was no longer sleeping. She apologized for her behavior and wanted to thank him somehow. Without thinking twice, the arrogant Granfell decided to give her an envelope from the tower with a request for a fee of objects. The girl was ready to ennoble whether Ho Yolya was absolutely any way. But as it turned out, the tower made it for Li Ho Yolya for free since the level of his authority was like that of the highest magician, and from them the fee was not charged. Now Ho Yol did not know what to ask Bak Yi Sol. Harkon knocked on the room. It looks like rumors about a girl who spread across the island turned out to be true, and about the crying Inika too. The knights just accompanied the king to Li Hyol. King Hakuna entered and Bak introduced himself to everyone who she was. Well, Kakuna arrived for the advice of Li Hoyu. This surprised him. Recently, a resident of Arcana settled in a Yuzra, wanting to start life from scratch. However, in the past, his behavior left much to be desired. Therefore, now the king wanted to entrust the fate of this man, whether Ho Yol. These man turned out to be none other than Biek. The king knew that she made his way to the kingdom secretly and at night. Who was talking about whether Ho Yol immediately understood. He ordered Bak will return home and establish in writing how far mythology is ready to go for the benefit of the kingdom of Yuzra, and bring to the next meeting. Hearing about the next meeting, Bak Yi Salt blossomed. She will still see Li Ho Yol. Well, it was time to serve him. The king asked where Ho Yol gathered. Hearing about permafrost, Harkon began questions. Then whether Ho Yol will inform everyone that the king of demons appeared there in the city. And in Hokkaido, in front of the portal, Tai Ming tried to break through the cordon, but he was still not allowed. The guys from Inazuma have been conducting for some time in the fall and the ratings have not changed. And it was strange. Something was wrong. Tai Ming tried to prove this to us to prove the guards. The leader of the Shining Rocks was not going to intervene so as not to disgrace, but he was also uneasy. The Guildmaster Rocks hinted to the protection that if they continued to restrain them, an international scandal could be untied, and this was not beneficial to anyone. And then having received some kind of message by the walkie-talkie, one of the cordon gave the order to everyone to disperse and free the passage to permafrost. A record came from the shooting of drones that sent to permafrost. There was an Inazum guild and a demon that was next to them. The government was even going to send bombers to help, but Hisagi Kazuma tell them not to intervene and would not interfere with the players. The break is in an accessible territory. You can use modern weapons, but it will also beat everyone. The demon was rampant. He ruined another member of the guild. Hisagi was in shock. This is a total extermination. There was no salvation. But it was a mistake. Salvation came from where they did not expect. Before the demon, Tai Ming suddenly jumped to us and saved Hisagi from imminent death. Tai Ming was not enthusiastic about Kazuma, but did it because of Li Ho Yolya, which, as it turned out, was already standing on a cliff nearby with reinforcement in the form of the Order of the Lionheart. The knights rushed into battle. The Order of the Lionheart was magnificent. Now Inazuma has a chance of salvation. Granfell was amazed to what the demons did with the bodies of the inhabitants of the city. The King of Demons crossed all the borders and brutally pays for it. The scale of the living apparently appeared because Li Hoyle stepped on the lands of permafrost, and she was filled very little. There were very few living. The leader of the Order of Harkon also did not expect that the city would be in such a deplorable state, and Li Ho Yol was going to go to save the city alone. Harkon was once again amazed at his strength of mind. Of course, Ho Spun expected the worst when he saw that the scale of the survivors was rapidly falling down. But if he came alone, he would be doomed. It was very lucky that Harkon went with him. A few hours earlier, when Lee Ho-yul only gathered in Perslot, King Haekun was outraged that he was about to go alone, and he demanded that all the fighters follow him. But whether Ho-yul himself did not want to wait until everyone gets gathered since there was no time. The extermination of demons was the only way out to save at least some of the people. Since Harkon promised his emperor to return after the extermination of all demons, Harkon said that he and his order will immediately go with him. It arranged King Haakon, but someone needed to accompany the king. This role was suggested by Back as gratitude for salvation and all inconvenience caused. It was a backing chance for correction, and she was provided to her. The king was pleased that everything was so successful. The scale of the living continued to empty. It was time to urgently hit the road. If the scale is completely empty, then the quest will be failed. Inazuma Gaon and Lee Ho-yul were in front of the southern gates of Permafrost. There were 4 of the total entrants to the city, 1 on each side. Inazuma was very lucky that the help arrived on time. Now it was not important who is a competitor to whom. The main task is to save the survivors and oneself. As expected from the Knights of the Lion's Heart, they quickly cleared the square in front of the gate. The title of strongest knights in the world belongs to them. Now you can enter the city, and even faster than expected. The Guild of Shining was already approaching the city, but they went to the western gate. The guild participants did not understand where they were going because they had passed by the main gate for a long time. For a long time, Rox saw on the Arcana Forum one post in which no one believed. Then Rox ignored it too and forgot. But today, after leaving the portal, another person said about this. Lee Ho-yul, the same as in that post. Right now in Permafrost, there is a king of demons. And now Rox wants to get to him first. A little late at the place of events, Huigon was in a hurry to the city. He overslept and now rushed with all his feet. Suddenly in the sky above the city, he saw the light. And the rest who were nearby saw this light. Magic of light. Granfell, thanks to magic, tried to open the gate to the city. The bubbles of air flew as bewitched. He froze the city gate to make them easier to break. What Granfell actually did, absolutely everyone admitted that he was just a genius, and Jesse could not even dream of such a level of ownership of magic. City gates were open. All players received a common quest instantly, the liberation of Permafrost. Mertzlota fell into the hands of the King of Demons. As Rox guessed, everything turned out to be true as in that post about the King of Demons. During the siege, the city gate was taken into account as a significant contribution. Therefore, Rox came to others. The knights and guilds were in no hurry to go through the arch to the city. Harkon was already ready to attack about orders, but Lee Ho-yul had not yet allowed. A difficult aura was felt more and more after the destruction of the gate. Granfell was sure that there is someone inside, or something. The guilds were also expected from Lee Ho-yul to enter inside. Tae-ming intended us to give all the points of the contribution to Lee Ho-yul and rush to the gate. As it turned out, inside there were demons. A lot of demons. Tae-mine shouted to us, trying to stop, but he did not have time to move away. The demons grabbed him, and they tried to drag into the Dark Arch. It was necessary to save him. Ezuka was the first. The Knight of Yesik Bright in a minute rescued us, Tae-mina, from the clutches of demons. In her battle technique, he recognized Barbara, but that was not all. Eisiku and Us Tai-min were gathering a ring of demons. Granfell was just about to come to their aid as he was ahead of him. The girl in a dark cloak jumped out of nowhere, and she asked the drunken to put a portal next to her. It was a group of 3 magicians, Kichi, Lokiel, and Drunkenness. They were not from the Tower of Magicians, however. They used the magic of portals. Alari put a portal above the ground. The portal was directed down, and a group of magicians invited everyone to use it. But Lee Ho-yul did not plan to do this. The knights rushed in an attack on demons. Nobody went through the portal, but just ran forward. So far, it was not even clear who it was. The battle began. Suddenly, Granfell began to come messages. Kichi Lokok and Helpari from the detachment, shadow mercenaries, gave him their contribution points. He did not understand why and why. Kichi was the commander. The detachment, as it turned out, was sent to the help of King Hakuna. Reinforcement in any case will not interfere. Now, looking at Lee Ho-yul, Kichi found out who she then saw in the forest and who was distracted by the fragile leopard. Having met him, you can earn bonuses in the Yuzra. Arcana 2A conducted special news. In second place was the guild Departed by the Sun. They were at the Eastern Gate. The general quest of liberation began. The leader of the guild United by the Sun, Liu Zhenchun, was sure that the largest number of points would be made. He already had 1,812. He scored the largest number of points among players who have unveiled their contributions. Liu Zhensun did not yet know that Lee Ho-yul had more than 35,000 points. Shining can and are capable of individual contractions. But when it comes to an organized siege, they were not suitable for Note's Liu Zhenchunya, in his opinion. And now he was madly pleased with the number of his points. Glasses continued to grow with Granfell. It is good that the detachment of dark mercenaries voluntarily voluntaries to explore the terrain through the portal. A detachment of shadow mercenaries formed from several elite specialists under the command of Captain Kichi. They perform the resulting task by any available methods, and also known by the fact that they do not pay much attention to the ethics of their tasks. Using the locketing portal, looked around. Apparently no one was hiding next to them, but it was still dangerous through the gate. There are enough traps even to kill the dragon. When Hilpari tried to make a portal inside the isle did not allow him to do this. Apparently the power of the King of Demons. Therefore, you need to find another way to go inside the city. And then Essica Bright reported that she knew the desired passage. A huge refuge for evacuation is under permafrost, and underground passages permeate the entire territory. One of the entrances is located near the walls of the castle. Essica was also sure that most of the embroiders were there. And then Tai Min understood us for sure that Ezek from Permafrost, he was not mistaken that she was brewing like himself. Essica herself also knew that Tai Min Barbar is like her. Tai Min knew us only about the entrance for the barbarians. In Permafrost, everyone was familiar with the basics of evacuation. The shelter under the city is as large as the catacombs near Paris. And then Essica and Tai Min brought us Hoyolia and Knights to that entrance. A spell is imposed on him so that only the inhabitants of Permafrost and barbarians could see him. This secret door was in the middle of the walls and looked like a grate. Tai Min told us that the spell worked normally, and the door looked untouched, but when he opened it and looked inside, it turned out to be different. It was all the fasterly littered with the bodies of the inhabitants of the city, and on the wall are traces of a demonic ritual. Pentagram painted with blood. Someone called a demon here. They entered the city that turned into hell. The knights collected bodies to transfer to another place. Kichi believed that it was the wrong and complete madness. Instead of going into battle with demons, the detachment stood in a patrol. But the drunkenness did not share her indignation and perfectly understood An Li Hoyolia and saw what power he possessed. He believed that he needed to wait and see what Hoyol planned. In the catacombs, Essica came up to Hoyol. She thanked him for allowing her to take out the body. After all, Persloda was her homeland, and all these people by her fellow countrymen. Granfell did not know how to console him, but said that honor would not allow him to act otherwise. Meanwhile, the points of his contribution have increased more than 41,000. While the bodies were taken out, the knights discovered an underground square. It was a terrible sight. Dozens of people were hanged on poles in some strange sequence. The same was the same on other passages. This is the circle created with the use of blood and bodies. In order to call the King of Demons, it is necessary to make a sacrifice in the same way as in the ritual of exorcism. All these circles of calling from the entrance and then are connected together in a long giant circle to call the King of Demons. Therefore, the bodies made affected the contribution glasses. After all, the players actually returned the offers given to the King of Demons. Granfell was looking for Harkon, which was also reported about what had happened. The walls of the dungeon began to shake, trembling as if an earthquake began. But it was not it. This is a cap of hooves. Li Ho Yol ordered is preparing for the battle, and they appeared. Demons on their horses. Ambush. The demons were furious from the fact that someone touched their offerings. There were many demons, and they were a 400 level. But it was not an ambush, but a retreat. Behind the demons, they drove Harkon and Tae Min. The just caring monsters were just a cut. Most likely they were here just to check what happened with the Circle of the Call since the removal of bodies violated it. Soon the elite will arrive here. It is likely that this will be at least the demon commander. This is true. From there he appeared. But before the demon attacked him, Granfell managed to expose the stone wall in front of him as usual. This magic seemed quite curious to the demon. Harkon recognized the demon. He used to be a commander from the Northwestern Valley, who opposed Harkon 10 years ago. Harkon tried to attack the demon, but he was faster. After all, not a few years have passed for him, as for Harkon, but 10. 4 days in the Lasso Pass as one on Earth. Therefore, this demon trained much longer than Harkon. His experience was great. Suddenly, the castle began to shake even more. Something happened, and suddenly the whole castle rose into the air for some unknown reason. The demon did not want to deal with the weaklings. He was about to leave. But manipulating the rage of Harkon, the demon said that he could find him to take revenge if he could. Li Hoyolia created a new class quest. It was necessary to deal with the 9 commanders of demons, who dispersed throughout Permafrost. Well, this one has already left. The ceiling began to collapse. The exit was blocked by debris. The whole city was shaking. The only way was through a break on the ceiling. If the catacombs are destroyed, then the whole city will suffer significantly, because on these catacombs the whole city stands. Any survivors will be most likely to hit. And in the worst version, even if it is possible to return to Permafrost, it will be completely destroyed. You need to urgently look for a way out. Granfell had a plan, very dangerous to himself, and he began to create magic. He is unlikely to be able to keep the entire network of tunnels with his mana, but if he does not try, he will regret it. A huge pillar of light hit him. It was seen from all sides very far away, and not only the players saw him, but through the black curtains, the surviving permafrost that were collected in the same room and hid from the demons. Their leader was Karun Barbarian. The included barbarians informed Karun that they carried out reconnaissance outside and found that all the demons defending the southern gates were dead. Researchers returned. What Granfell did was incredible. He built stone arches under the city on his own. The skill of aesthetics is activated. The warrior's permanent. No one could believe his eyes. It was an incredible sight. Let this be destroyed by Granfell himself. He did it. Dozens of stone sculptures now held the supports of the city and dungeons. The forces in Mana, Li Ho Yolia were running out. Mana was spent all. If it were not for the hexagonal brooch that restored 10% of mana, Granfell probably could not finish the construction of these supports. and the characteristic of the aesthetics gave them the appearance of statues. This characteristic added simply aesthetics, but it still looked impressive. Thinking about this demon, Harkon blamed himself that many years ago did not defeat him. Then perhaps now such fate would not have overtakes permafrost. Suddenly, some kind of shadow hung over the city. Tae Ming screamed to us. These were bats. A whole cloud. Of course, these were not ordinary bats, and it was necessary to prepare again for battle. Although there are many of them quite weak, you need to keep yourself in your hands and beat one after another. But something else was approaching. Something strong and large. Granfel's skill of a natural enemy was activated. Another demon commander in the form of a huge raven. A hell of a 500-level Tash. The hellish Ptah opened her mouth planning to devour Granfell, and he really no longer has mana left to fight back. Helped Jessie Heineness, using magic. She tried well, but she certainly did not succeed in such magical traces as Granfell. Instead of gratitude, Granfell began to criticize Jessie. What struck Ho Yolya? Allegedly too many unforeseen consequences are more than usual. A lot of effort at the stage of manifestation has been invested. The environmental environment was also not taken into account. But Jessie was not offended, but on the contrary, she was in a hurry to record and learn all this. She adored Ho Yolya. Meanwhile, the detachment of shadow mercenaries were still in the patrol. Helpari sketched the magic traces of Granfell that he recently saw. After the earthquake, when the castle rose to the sky, they were not told anything. Captain Kichi thought that it was necessary to go and find out everything himself. Suddenly, not far, Lokok saw the outlines of silhouettes, as if someone was following them. They seemed to be surrounded, but a moment later they disappeared. The detachment prepared for the fight. Someone was approaching them. Kichi suspected that it was demons again. But these were not demons, but ordinary people, barbarous. They came to find out about the nature of the world that they saw in the window. So one of the 10 demon commanders was defeated in the quest Li Ho Yolya, although he was struck by Jessie. Apparently this does not have to be Granfell. Tae Ming, who came up to us, reported that the nights were completed with the transportation of bodies to the shelter, although it seemed to him that most likely the remaining survivors not here. The analysts of the guild analyst Gaon released drones to look around, but the underground tunnels are difficult to explore. Suddenly a portal appeared. Alakari appeared from him. He planned something to report to Hoyol, but he was interrupted by a guy who also incredibly leaned out of the portal. Barbara was interested in who was the main one here, and who is the author of that strange blue light. The next one who left the portal was a barbarian Ares who immediately recognized us, Taimina. They hugged. They have not seen each other for many years but have always been good friends. Ares informed us, Taimin, that Karun would be glad to see him. I am very glad that Karun also survived to us, Taimin. The familiarity of the barbarians was very annoyed by the mannered and correct Granfell. The barbarians did not know etiquette. But fortunately in the culture, the barbarians Granfell sorted out, therefore not offended by them. In addition, it was pleasant for him that Ares called him a leader and praised a pillar of light. It was noticeable that the barbarians refer to Li Hoi with respect. For many years, their leader Karun made sorties to take out all the survivors from the city if possible. Previously, the barbarians lived near the city in the forest bargaining and working with permafrost. But once they saw how permafrost flashed, the wind brought them a disgusting smell and an ominous aura. The barbarians immediately ran to permafrost under the leadership of Karun. What they then saw was terrible. The generals in the appearance of the birds flew everywhere, squeezing the warriors' permafrost in their claws as if mocking them, and the demons in the appearance of animals hung everywhere the bodies of the inhabitants of permafrost. The Brotherhood of the Barbarians fought to the last to save the survivors. However, there were many demons and they were too strong. Most of the brothers, including Karun, were seriously injured. After this survivor, they looked for many more years, but things were only worse. Even the fire could not be kindled in order not to attract demons, because of which the survivors slowly died of hunger and cold. So everyone gradually began to lose hope. Until today, have not yet seen this bright light and did not understand that the researchers returned. So they called magicians. This ray of light has become a symbol of a new hope in this dark city. Ares thanked Whether Hoyolya for that, and everyone else who came with him. And if they are going to struggle the king of demons, then the barbarians are ready to provide any assistance to researchers. They are ready to beat shoulder to shoulder with the players. The king of demons that captured this place is called Dekara, one of the 72. He controls the birds like familiarians. It is difficult to fight the barbarians with them, because they are accustomed to fight on Earth, although they are ready to do everything so that Ho-Yol got to the enemy, even at the cost of their lives. It was very nice, but Li Ho-Yol refused, but was very surprised by everyone who was nearby. However, the whole thing was that Granfell did not plan to sacrifice Chimi. There are other priorities, and Granfell asked the Drunken to move all the Yuzra survivors through the portals, and to transfer to King Hakun a request to provide them with warm housing and food. The Guildmaster Taemin Ho-Yol ordered us to go with them. It will be good if the Guildgon can provide protection for the survivors during the evacuation. In addition, the fate of the barbarians is clearly not indifferent to those mine. So it was. Taemin thanked us Li Ho-Yolya. Li Ho-Yol himself was not going to. He had incomplete things left here. The traces of the aura of the jacket brought here another demon. It was another hellish Tash of the 500th level, and Granfell planned to deal with him. The inhabitants of Permafrost could not believe that they were finally saved. They also moved to the legendary island of Yuzra. And then Taimin had a class quest, Taimin's secret barbaric reception. It was strange. This quest belonged to Karun, leader. Only one person in each class can get a class quest. Then Taiming asked us for Aries, where Karun. Karun was supposed to be a sortie, as it turned out. Taiming rushed to us at the door to look for Karun. They tried to stop him, but to no avail. It was too dangerous to go alone, but Taimin did not think about anything at that moment. Since childhood, Karun was not only a friend of Taimina, but also a mentor. For a long time, Taimin asked Karun to teach him the secret intake of the barbarians, but he considered Taimina too small for this. Taimin Karun always laughed over the incomprehensible to us, and now Taimin found us. But he will not be able to talk anymore, because Karun was one of those who hung on a pillar as a sacrifice. Therefore, the class quest gave us Taimin. And over their heads, another hellish patosh circled, General Demon. The class quest Taimina said that you need to show your wild nature. The sinister feeling did not leave Hoyolia. Something was wrong, not according to plan. There were too many enemies around. Harkon asked to create a staircase to fight them in the air as last time, but this did not make sense. Heaven of their possessions. Granfell planned to overthrow them to Earth, and then destroy. The demon mocked Granfell, how he could even think that he was able to compete with them, and the demons went on the attack. The fact that they went to light should mean that they are sensitive to him. In this case, it may work on hand. Granfell sent a ray of light to demons. The commander of the army of the demon, Hellish Ptah, is stunned. The first, second, third. It worked. Now you need to lower them to the ground so that it was possible to fight with them. The magic lightning used by Jesse previously used. It is necessary to repeat it. Granfell did this and struck the first Hellish Ptah. Again, the first, second, third struck. Granfell was enough for this one spell. Jesse was in a pleasant shock once again. Li Ho Yol himself did not think that everything would turn out so easily. Already, 6 out of 10 generals have been struck. There are 4 more. The barbarians just completed the evacuation of civilians. But it was also reported that Taiming did not return to us. Yes, and Karun never lingered on sorties for so long? Surely something happened to them. Granfell got angry that Taimin went there alone, but he followed him. And the demon was already holding Taimina to us by the throat with flying over the ground. Taimin had almost no strength. He was wounded. But those minds did not expect to pray for mercy about mercy. Barbarians do not give up just like that. The impudence of the demon had fun. Then the demon began to laugh at Karun. That was his mistake. Due to the ridicule of Karen, Taimin mastered us more and more fury, and he squeezed his hand into a fist. As it turned out, Karen's last words were about him, that Taimin will now become a worthy leader instead of him. So the demon was curious what kind of super-sitting guy would appear. The demon was clearly mocking Taimin. The only more it scurried him. And the next moment, Taiming, furious to us, clutched his teeth into the demon's hand and deprived him of this hand. It was the price of ridicule over the leader of the barbarians, Karun. Taiming was like a wild beast. It turns out Karun knew that this would happen. Class Quest's secret reception of barbarians was completed. Taiming has earned an exclusive class skill of the Call of Nature. The Call of Wildlife awakens the true frenzy imprisoned inside, significantly increasing the characteristic of wildness. Taiming jumped to the demon from behind, and again wounded. The demon already realized that it was better to stay at the maximum possible distance from us Timin, but he again crept behind by depriving the demon of the wings. The hellish Ptah could not stay more. He had already dreamed that Taimin be broken from him. The blow to the blow, and the demon was already practically without strength, but he came to the rescue of another general demon, wounding Taimina with a spear very much. Hell Ptah Amikon arrived in time. Uncertain as Taimin fell from a height of the ground. He thought it was already the end. His recklessness was for sure for Ho Yol. It is a pity that he did not have time to apologize to him. And after this thought, someone became near us Taimina. It was Weather Ho Yol, very unexpected. Helltas were also surprised at this phenomenon. Taimin was ashamed before Li Ho Yole. He loves manners so much, and Taimin behaves here like a wild beast. Followed by Harkon, Essek, and Jesse. Brother Taimina to us, Chal, as they told us, began to sound alarm about the absence of a younger brother in touch. The demons began to insult all those present by the new one, but Granfell closed their mouths with one light blow. Hel Ptah fell to the ground, but he continued to pour his curses. Granfell intended to show this his present place, and these were not heaven. Meanwhile, the Shining also fought with the hellish Ptosh. It was almost impossible to fight him in the air. We'll have to rely on rocks. Camilla covered him with onions and arrows. And when she shot at the bird and distracted his attention, Rox jumped from behind and attacked the demon. It is perfectly worked out. The plan was a success. The hellish Ptah fell and it was clear that it was over. 8 players were wounded in this battle, but all the benefit is alive. In the studio of Arcana, promptly all the news was reported to the population. The director of the channel looked at the ratings and was extremely disappointed. Views fell and why it was incomprehensible. In the chat, the director found the answer to his question. The broadcast of Huigana, who was conducted in real time, showed more interesting things. As for example, right now Ho Yol is fighting with another demon. and there the demon already begged Ho-Yolya to spare him and let him go. I tried to give up, but all to no avail. Whether Ho-Yol did not lead with prey. Ho-Yole really, as before, was relentlessly followed by Hui-Gan with his spectators on the air. The next demon army commander was defeated. But while this Ptah Granfell won, almost lost all mana, I tried different ways. From how Granfell made various changes at the stage of intervention, to use the same spell in different ways incredibly struck Jesse. Fortunately, at least Taemin was wounded, but he was alive and could even go. He began to apologize to Ho-Yol for Gon himself, but he stopped him in the rock that a man so fiercely fighting for his people cannot but admire. And then the messages of everyone at once jumped out. The general quest has transformed. The last commander of General Demon fell. He was struck by the Guildmaster united by Heaven Liu Zhenchun. He was almost insane and was going to become a ruler of permafrost. He already had 41,000 contribution points, but Liu Zhenchun did not even realize that Li Ho-Yolya almost 472,000 of these points. Harkon suddenly noticed a man nearby. The knight recognized in him Count Syrian, which knew earlier. Harkon did not believe his eyes. How the Count managed to survive. Previously, Syrian was the Lord of Permafrost. He was introduced by Ho-Yol personally. Taemin shouted to us that he had never seen him until they went here on permafrost, and it was strange. Then Granfell demanded that this farce immediately stop. The skill of the natural enemy was activated, and he realized who really in front of him. It was him, King of Demons. People around the world watched this spectacle thanks to the broadcast of Hui-Gan, even the director of Arcana Tue, the head of the Order of the Lionheart. Harkon did not immediately believe that this is the King of Demons and not the Count. There must be a misunderstanding. The same continued the performance. Syrian cried that he could not save his subjects and wandered around the city. Speaking about this, Syrian approached the acute protrusion of the cliff and rushed at her. Everyone who sees it opened their mouths from shock. Granfell did it. No one understood why Ho-Yol did it, but surprisingly, the Count was still alive. Syrian's body moved and black, gloomy darkness hung around him. The resistance of the element of the earth of the opponent was high. The magic of the earth did not act on him. It will not be easy to deal with him. This was already clear. Syrian's face began to transform. It was already obvious to everyone that it was a demon. Grabbing Harkon was ready to attack the demon, and he did it, but nothing came of this oddly enough. The castle rose again into the sky to a great height with the demon. The demon merged with the castle of permafrost. He just enveloped the palace. Everyone saw it, even the barbarians who were in the other edge of the city. Near the northern gates, permafrost also sharpened the battle. There were a lot of demons, and they did not end. Suddenly, the demons stopped and began to retreat all at once. They were in a hurry somewhere. The King of Demons called them. All demons began to dump, from all the locations where the players were guilds. The sky above the permafrost was completely covered by demons who flew in one direction. The message said that the King of the Demons of Dekaraya would soon reveal his true form. Then all the players realized what kind of black mess that raised the castle to the sky. King of Demons. So far in the form of a huge egg. If this is awakened in Japan, then the whole world will come to an end. This must be stopped in any way. The ritual has already begun, but the knights made all the offers for this ritual from the dungeons. But as the demon himself said, victims, people should not have to be. What was in the sky was like magic circles from the underground shelter of permafrost. Demons sacrificed themselves to complete the ritual. It was rubbish. Only Granfell could stop it, and he must come up with something. The demon knew that he was planning, and I could not allow it. The King of Demons created illusions to drive others crazy. Karkon seemed that Dekarahi grabbed Li Ho-Yolya. He saw rivers of blood around him. Of course, Ho-Yol tried to reason Harkon and prove that everything is in order with him. This is just the illusion of the demon. The demons were dispersed in the sky. The King of Demons was surprised that Granfell figured out his illusion, but it was too late. The sacrifice has already been committed. Soon the King of Demons will be revived. This huge egg absorbed the circle of call. Inside the egg was the embryo of the King of Demons, who was gaining strength. In the center of Hokkaido, people took up the streets and watched this terrifying spectacle. A state of emergency was wound up in the city. Hokkaido was qualified as a dangerous zone. As a result, from 8 o'clock today, the city will be completely blocked. The authorities insisted on evacuation. On the phone, Tae was uninhabited to us that an order from Korea came. All players who are on the territory of Hokkaido are recommended to return home. The authorities are going to completely block Hokkaido. Right now, the Departed by Heaven and several other guilds began a retreat. But Li Ho-Yol does not leave until it turns out with the demon. You need to try the ritual of exorcism. The damned necklace was chosen as a quality of offering, so they met again with this demon from the past. There was a problem. The ritual of exorcism left the defenseless Granfell in the real world. He again erected a protective stone wall near him. Again this technique with stones. But the demon needed to destroy Granfell because he and his army are in danger while he was alive. Then the demon attacked Granfell trying to break through the stone wall, but Harkon prevented him. They had old scores with the demon, and even if the first meeting Harkon could not restrain his weaknesses, he and so forced his majesty to wait too long. Having activated the sword, the aura Harkon would be configured to end this demon once and for all. His sword turned out more and stronger than usual. In order not to distract Ho-Yolya from exorcism, Harkon told him that he could rely on him and trust him. What Granfell did, Harkon attacked the demon with a sword of aura. Granfell continued the ritual of exile. The king of demons understood this and again tried to interfere with him. The demons who sacrificed themselves began to resurrect. All 10 demons' army commanders were again ready for battle with the players, the generals of which were struck earlier and were very strong, and there were at once 10, not one at a time before. The king was the first demon who realized that Granfell is one of the representatives from Akshan and possesses their abilities and knowledge. And the king of demons also knew about the ritual of exorcism and its details. He entered the consciousness of Granfell even deeper. The effect of obsession is imposed. Will he be able to withstand it? Whether Hoyol would not have managed, but this mind was already more than Granfell and not his personally. The abnormal state of obsession did not work. The demon failed to take possession of his mind. The egg in which the king of demons was located incredibly brightly blinding the players for a moment, and the sound from him stunned everyone around. In Granfell, the force was hidden about which even he himself did not know. It was an endless, deep, ominous darkness that has always been inside him. The king of demons escaped. He understood that Granfell was very dangerous for him. The demon needs the body even more, and he revealed his true form. He was huge and terrible. To strengthen the ceremony of exorcism, Granfell chose the Letty neckline with a devil's jewelry and a suffocating tie as an offer. The more objects increased the ritual, the more chances of success. But the king of demons could not escape far. Granfell found him, and the revived demons meanwhile went on to actions and attacked the players in permafrost. The warriors of the demon were ready to protect him. The city was destroyed before our eyes. The guild of Inazum, led by Hisagi, unexpectedly joined the players. The knights beat magicians with swords of all their tricks. Thanks to Camille and her magic arrows, 2 hellish PTAs were captured. Prophet and Shining. Lee Ho-yol did not move. He was in the demon's mind and it was necessary to protect him. Now, once a disaster capable of destroying the whole world wakes up wherever anyone fled, it is useless. Therefore, the guilds came to help, because they believe that Ho-yol somehow once again gets out of the scare. The guild of the Second Son also joined the detachment like Inazuma. And then, unexpectedly, Chal appeared to us. He was too worried about his brother to stand aside. A large detachment with an automatically assigned raid status has been registered. Demons actively advancing. It was impossible to let them get to Lee Ho-yolya. The king of demons brought to horror exactly that the players were not scared, and did not run away from the battle, and despair did not defeat their souls. Their human pride does not fall. Of course, the king of demons Inn could not believe that pride was capable of at least something. General Demons struck Harkon, which he is unlikely to be able to survive. But he was mistaken. Harkon got up and hit the answer. The commander-in-chief of the demon army was struck. The moral spirit of the army of demons has decreased much. The power of the king of demons weakened. Harkon coped. With even greater enthusiasm, the guild attacked the remains of demons. Another commander of the Kupikan is struck. Inazuma still managed to think about getting around Gaon in the ranking. The commander of the demon army Amikan was also struck thanks to Inazuma. The demons were weak. The commander of the demon army Horikan was weighted. The power of the king of demons again weakened again. The king himself was also on the verge. His army almost fell. People ruined all his commanders at once. But he resisted the ritual too much. Granfell spent so many mana and exorcism was becoming increasingly difficult to support. The king of demons fell into the rage of Rusha on his way of the house of the street, the whole northern city of Merzlot. It seems that the king of demons tried to escape from the ritual of exorcism to try to survive and break out of the ritual. No one understood where this monster was moving. People were very scared, and the monster moved to the city center where civilians were evacuated. If you let him go, then the tragedy is not to avoid. It is necessary to concentrate on the ritual and finish it. Mana Granfell almost ended at that moment. The ritual of exorcism ceased its action. And then the inner dark side of Granfell recalled that N has its own source of magic different from ordinary mana. What Mattis was talking about. Inner darkness. With the help of black magic, Granfell again attacked the king of demons with a double layer. The whole world was watching this incredible sight. The king of the demons of Dekaraya was struggled. The quest in the repulsion of permafrost was completed. Granfell managed to return the hope of the northern city of Merzlot. As expected, less than an hour, this topic became the most discussed channels in all news and so on. Satisfied with the fact that finally at home, Ho-yol stretched out on the bed and wanted to relax. But after the victory over Dekarahia over his remains, thick smoke rose. At the same time, a new quest appeared. Akshan's heritage. Perhaps this one is somehow connected with the Granfell of which Lee Hoyle met in the Halls of Reason. So far, nothing can be sure of anything. The last words of the King of Demons about the fact that this darkness should not fall into the hands of people embarrassed. A few days after the salvation, permafrost, the results of the players were published. Lee Ho-yolya had almost 1,000,000 points and further a system error was given. The doctor came to examine the doctor at the Yuzra Hurkan archipelago, since he was still wounded. What was the surprise of the doctor when he saw that the seriously wounded knight had already begun training? Back Saul came with the doctor. The doctor was horrified. After all, the exercises were contraindicated. In general, no one was able to dissuade him, even King Hakun, who was glad that Harkon was already so better. The king came to Harkon to convey a message from Lee Ho-yolya. It was a pen of hellish patas that remained on the battlefield. This item of a rare rank rightfully belonged to Harkon, who defeated this monster. This trophy will need Harkon to prove to the Emperor that he did it. Attentiveness and Lee carrying Hoyolia incredibly touched and impressed Harkon Kinsguard. A few days passed after the victory over the King of Demons. Life returned to its direction. However, much has changed. The director and sponsor of the Anazim Guild was furious because they gave ahead of the Hoei, and now they also boredly expressed gratitude for saving their lives. This time, Hisagi did not endure it silently. In order to get around Gon, he would never sacrifice the lives of civilians. He very rudely and clearly expressed his position in front of his boss. He was in shock with such impudence. Hisagi Kazum, along with the Inazum Guildia, turned away from Japan officially. Now the guilds remained to come up with what to do next, turning away from their homeland. They found refuge on the Yuzura archipelago and continued their activities as a guild already there. The Japanese government became furious, but nothing could do anything technically with this. They themselves wiped the best players of their nation. The blogger Pak Huigan was very hugged with his channel, and now receives constant offers about cooperation from various companies. The head of the guild, the second son, Sreg, managed to raise his rating after the siege of Permafrost, as expected, and was pleased. With regard to Gon, everyone is talking about a class quest for us, Taimina. Well, Jessie Heineness left the full control of the Shining. This was a blow to Rox, but Jessie herself informed him that she would not leave the guild completely. Well, the main person arc kind of disappeared at that time. Lee Ho-yol is gone. Somewhere in the world, he is looking for new information about the new class quest, but so far his searches have not led to any progress. Whether this is a legacy of Akshan somewhere, and visiting the tower library was too risky because it was hiding from everyone. There is no progress in the class quest. There is no permafrost award for the siege. Also, these strange last words of the King of Demons. Of course, Granfell has always suspected what differs from other players, but after synchronization with his character, the behavior of Lee Hyal changed too much, so it should not have been. Plus, Granfell, which Ho-yol met in the Halls of Reason. Usually players should not meet their characters. It was more than strange. Perhaps this is an exclusive skill of demon hunters. A message came behind these thoughts. The level of Granfell has grown 10 times again. The distribution of points for permafrost began. 30 levels up. Yes, and objects as a reward. Is it what Ho-yol was waiting for? Kinship and authority also increased to the maximum in permafrost. That was not all. Granfellow was invited to attend the appointment ceremony of the new ruler of permafrost. The players had a strange foreboding. What is this new ruler? The guildmaster of the second son was in shock because he planned to become a ruler. And then another message came whether Ho-yoli. It said that it was he who the new ruler of the city of Perslot? The ruler menu was added to the system, but Granfell did not notice these messages. A whole crowd gathered at the ceremony. The city was decorated for the holiday. A new ruler entered the balcony of the palace. Everyone shouted and greeted him. The cameras were filmed. Not fully understanding what happened, Granfell thought about what was wrong with these people. After all, he just went out after you spent a long time in the library. The ceremony began. Notices were rained down on him that he was now officially the ruler of Permafrost. All guilds and orders also welcomed and congratulated Ho-yolia. They could not miss such an event. What Ho-yol did further struck everyone. He abandoned the role of the ruler. Since Permafrost is in any case within Arcana, it will be more logical to leave the ruler of the Emperor. And everyone understood that it was technically true, but the city still needed its ruler. Then, using the characteristic, the authority of Granfell decided to appoint a legitimate ruler himself. And this burden was assigned to the shoulders of a brave knight from the Order of the Lionheart of Harkon Kingsguard. Granfell sincerely hoped that Persloda would be reborn and shine with new rays of hope. Harkon accepted his will. Having taken the oath of the Knight Harkon, he promised that the security of the city would be under control this time. Already in the Tower of Magicians, Lee Ho-yol sighed calmly. To be the ruler of the dilapidated city and to restore it was not included in his plans. This is too much responsibility. Magic Marcello knocked and entered the office. He apologized to Lee Ho-yol because the tower did not help to overthrow the King of Demons. He was very ashamed of it. In fact, Marcello does not agree with those rules that did not allow the Tower of Magicians to intervene, and apologized for it. But he never dared to speak out against. The research quest of Marcello and Lee Ho-yolia was completed. Marcello had a new offer. The head of the guild Berserk was furious leafing through the news. Everywhere there is one Ho-yol. And when her ally reported what Ho-yol wants to thank the guilds for participating in the siege, she furious even more. Leone was angry that no one paid attention to Berserk now. In the Tower of Magicians, scientific conferences were regularly held. This time was no exception. This time, the meeting was held in the Hall of Truth Topaz. There were a great many people. The guy from the Berserk who brought the documents for verification did not know where to go. Finally, his turn came. He was invited to the office of the auditing presentation. How surprised he was when he saw Ho-yolia. It was he who checked and accepted the presentations. This is the quest of Marcello. As the best of Lee Ho-yol mages, he was obliged to participate in preliminary verification of work before the Conference of Magicians. The presentation that the representative of the Berserker brought, to put it mildly, did not like Ho-yol. The work was excerpts from other works by other authors. For such work, the guy was too self-confident. It was extremely impermissible. The guy was kicked out at the same second. The next one came in Claire. She was the magician of the healing school. Her work was associated with this direction. When Claire came out frightened, Balea suggested that she failed. But Balea was mistaken. Claire has passed. Here, Balea was very surprised. Is Marcello, the theme of the cultivation of magical plants, so interested? After all, she did not treat the potions too much. But Claire realized that the inspector this time was not Marcello. Then Balea even began to envy Marcello that he was the first to meet Lee Hyol and lured him into his research. Such a talented magician. It was the cultivation of the plants who discussed Marcello and Lee Hyol. The second convinced Marcello that the theme of Claire was very fruitful and useful, and would benefit in the future for the science of potions. And as it turned out, Marcello came with a new quest. Touch the paradoxical. Marcello would like Lee Hyol to investigate the boundaries between the world. Or to be more precise, I go out of them. The merger of magic and science. And he called this new development a paradox. And Marcello wanted to prove the existence of this paradox precisely with Lee Hyolia, as the space of arcana and the real world intersect. To study this phenomenon, is it possible that Hyol will be able to learn more about Granfell and his influence? And he agreed to the proposal of Marcello.